So, if you look at the agenda in front of you, the only thing I need to do is, after public forum, I'm going to inject a topic, the Animal Services Focus Group. They need a person to join their focus group. So, knowing that is coming above number 4, does anyone want to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Unanimously approved.
No, you actually didn't ask for it. Nay. I'm a nay.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So, 1 nay. Sorry. I thought everyone said aye.
Oh.
We'll make sure to collect this next time.
Oops.
Minutes approval.
What do you want to change?
Okay. I have a request from Carol to clarify something from the minutes last time.
Clarify and correct, I hope, because I think it's the risk you take when you make public comments that things can be taken out of context, snippets, and it looks fairly damning. In 3 years, I've really cherished the relationships that I have built with many officers as a result of going to court each day. Reading on the surface how this is stated, Carol Caldwell shared an article about officers lying in court due in part to requirements and grants. I think it would have been helpful to have made it clear this was an article that I had written, or at least to have reflected my own comments that I said very clearly that because of going to court every day and seeing trials, I had no reason to sense that we have this problem in our community of officers lying. So I'm asking that this be corrected. And I think even an email to each officer might be helpful in case some had read this and could have a wrong conclusion that I believe police lie in court. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Does anyone else have any changes to the minutes? You do.
I was unfortunately I was away for a personal death, so I was absent. I don't see my name listed in the absence.
Any other changes to the minutes? Are we still looking?
No.
So, does anyone want to...
I move to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstaining? Okay. They're approved. Public forum. Cameron. I'd like to call the table over Caldwell.
Gilbert Caldwell, 2510 Augusta. Greetings, Commissioners. Because of your own oft-professed interest in community values, governmental transparency, trust and relationship building, etc., here's a tale, an amazing tale of exactly that, involving a sergeant at Lane County Jail, Sergeant Dan Buchwald, a Muni Court judge, and a few other community heroines and heroes. You may have already heard about this via the media. For several years, it has been the jail's policy to take mugshots of folks working off fines and infractions by doing road crew, even though they're not actually housed at the jail. Road crew workers, even after paying off their debts to society, then discovered that some bottom-feeder scavenger tabloids and commercially based websites were then charging them many hundreds of dollars to remove that information. Yep, here's some money, lots of it, and we'll remove your mugshot. Despicable. These tabloids and websites were trolling the jail's website, lifting information and mugshots to publish, claiming this is a public service. Right. To cut to the chase, a couple of individuals who had done their road crew and then were being charged these prohibitive fees by these tabloids and websites made their concerns known to Sergeant Buchwald. Well, due to his great good credit and great credit due to a municipal court judge who immediately saw the exploitation in this shakedown, well, the ball was set in motion. So, as of February 28th, I'm delighted to share that no longer will those mugshots and other information of persons assigned to road crew be on the jail website, thus taking them out of the clutches of these scavenger bottom-feeder tabloids and websites. Big yay. So just when I was beginning to think that true community collaborative work between governmental bodies and community seemed a dim, far unreachable goal, lo and behold, my heart and soul were immeasurably lifted seeing the effective work of that jail deputy, Sergeant Dan Buchwald, the road crew supervisor, and that municipal court judge who really put her heart into this one. and certainly those 2 other community members who had paid their debt to society working on road crew, who then had the gumption to stand up and say, this is wrong. A wrong made right by a team of some wonderful community folk. Believe me, the lift I got from seeing this sure recharged my batteries and restored some faith. Good-hearted, community-minded people working collaboratively can and do make a difference. I appreciate those times when I see that spirit in the work you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
And that concludes our public forum. I'd like to turn the time back over to Kate.
Okay, so the new item on our agenda, I'm going to pass these around and let Carter explain what is needed and what you were getting.
The Animal Services Program has been requested to create an Animal Services Focus Group and have been also asked to have one member of that focus group be from the Police Commission. The summary, the goals, the objectives, and the definition, scope definition of the group and what it will be doing is draft. This has not been approved, which is why it's stamped draft, but it's intended to give you some information about what this position is, what the group is intended to do. They're looking at, I think, 2 meetings in the spring and another meeting in the fall, and they will be covering all areas of animal services: outreach, licensing, enforcement, budget, and shelter.
Okay, so we need one person to serve on this. Would anyone like to? I will if no one doesn't. If no one.
Put my wife on there.
Okay, I'll do it for the team. Angela, let's see, I'm a crazy cat lady. Okay, so on to the next. Comments?
Yes? My objection to having this on the agenda
Oh, yeah.
has to do with not enough notice to the public.
Okay.
I know that people have expressed interest in finding out how this is going to work out. I sent you a note a while ago with no response to these dates. I want to express and make it part of the record why my objection. The objection not so much for the conversation is not timely, not notified to the public of all this. I'm sure that people will have showed up to comment on this. Thank you very much.
Okay. Just to clarify, I'll bring this up again at the next meeting. If anyone wants to serve instead of me, I'll gladly swap out, and then I will make sure that whoever serves on this will bring updates that will be publicly notified once we have something from the work group. But thank you for bringing that up on purpose. Okay, comments from Chair and items from commissioners. Tara, you want to start?
Sure. Today I attended the second meeting of the committee to form a path to end the downtown public safety zone. The group today met for 2.5 hours and brainstormed ideas for enforcement strategies and the discussion about the goals, the original goals of the DPZ and how those might be approached in other ways, and also discussed if those goals have changed, and came up with a list of possible items that were headed under the headings drug enforcement / law enforcement tools, livability issues, and municipal court, further utilizing the municipal court. And there were quite a few items listed under each of those headings, and then there was also parking lot for other items that didn't fit under that. So when that list is published, I will make sure that that is shared with you, as well as the minutes from that meeting. It was quite an interesting and involved conversation, although we were missing some members. So the members that were missing will still be given an opportunity to contribute additional ideas and for the consideration of the groups in the next meeting. Are there any questions about that? Or the materials that were forwarded that we looked at in today's meeting? Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Can you go? Do you have anything? I'm sorry.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank the committee, the commission, and President, Vice President, for your condolences and stuff. We were caught all unexpectedly off when we had to rush out to get to Kansas City, and it's death in a family is never a pleasant thing to experience and stuff, but this is one, when you're there and a family member, you actually watch them take their last breath and stuff. It's something that you don't get over quite easily. So I appreciate all of the well wishes and prayers and everything else. Well, since I've been back, I did, as far as the Oregon Advocacy Commission, we did go before the State Ways and Means Commission last week, requesting funding for programs. One of the programs that we are still working on is, of course, Senate Bill number 144, which is hate crimes legislation. We also signed a letter in support of, there was a recent hate crime incident that occurred in Salem. One of the educators there, when she came back to her desk, someone left a bullet at her workstation and left some very explicit language and stuff as to the color of her skin and that she needed to leave. So the commission got together, we signed a letter, drafted a letter, and we forwarded that letter up to the governor and also to the Secretary, Department of Justice, to try to move forward on this hate crimes legislation and stuff. And I'll let you know how things develop after that.
Okay, yeah, I also attended the downtown public safety zone thing, but I think I'll hold my comments regarding that until the end of the meeting. But I don't know, I guess Carter sent it around, but there was a Register Guard editorial, so I may as well just read this. Okay, in February Register Guard editorial, I began identifying subgroups making up our growing homeless population. The mentally ill, veterans with PTSD, kids thrown out of their family, and kids who ran away from abusive parents. I told how a couple bankrupted by medical expenses had their car and possessions confiscated by EPD. A few days back, yet another homeless woman had her stuff carted off by Public Works. In that, quote, junk were her only photos of her family. 10,000 homeless live in this area. Adding to the above categories, there are 1,800 homeless children in area schools, plus roughly 1,200 parents for those kids. That's 3,000 of the 10,000 right there. Unfortunately, when I talk about homelessness, someone invariably insists that people are homeless by choice and because of bad behavior. They're drunks and drug addicts, so they deserve what they get. What sin did a first grader commit to cause God to punish her by making her family homeless? This moralizing, confused thinking would be laughable, except that it keeps us from solving the problem. Criminalizing misfortune does not work. So what does this non-solution actually cost us? The 2013 Eugene budget includes police expenditures of $47 million. To this we add the cost of courts, $4.5 million, and jail, $350,000. Offsetting this, we will receive $2 million from fines for a net criminal justice outlay of $50 million. The city's website states there are 190 sworn officers. Actual officers on the street is less, but dividing the net budget by 190 yields $260,000 per officer. After 4 years with the exclusion zone, the homeless are still downtown. Did an extra $1.8 million per year for 7 more officers downtown end the homeless problem? No. There are illegal homeless camps all around us. That's what it takes for 10,000 people to exist. We can continue to waste millions uprooting these camps only to have them reestablished a short distance away, or we can save money by allowing self-managed homeless villages on selected city-owned parcels and then mitigate the poop and trash impacts already happening. With the homeless safely tucked away in these villages, I'm betting crime actually declines. My orientation packet for the Police Commission says, quote, the Police Commission advises the police chief on matters of public safety, unquote. I say we do our job and advocate a lower cost fix to a long-standing problem. Thank you.
Juan Carlos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope that the downtown exclusion zone does find an alternative to capturing opportunities to downtown safety, and of course to find different ways of addressing homelessness in downtown. For several years now, I've been on the commission for 5 years. I remember even the very first year I was interested on how and if our law enforcement, specifically EPD, has had any contact that is perhaps questionable and in fact is not conducive to improving relationships with the community, specifically people of color. And that is transforming a lot of interest in the people that I know about racial profiling. That is something that I will be presenting to a subcommittee in a quest for asking that committee to establish or recommend the establishment of a racial profiling policy within EPD. All departments do have that kind of policy. I don't want that to be a surprise. It should not be a surprise. This conversation I started at least almost 5 years ago. The clarity in role of the Police Commission on Animal Services, I hope that's something that will be brought forward. This Animal Services program and the request from the city manager hopefully addresses some of that. But I still think that we still have to have a conversation at the Police Commission level to see what is, in fact, our role. I forwarded an email from the community to our Madam Chair about it. So that is something that we don't want to be caught by surprise. I also recall that in our last work plan, we had one of our highest rated items was how to capture public input and public participation. That plan, to my knowledge, has not been implemented. I hope we don't miss on that. I hope that in the next 2 or 3 months before the next work plan, for the next retreat, we actually do something about it. If I remember correctly, maybe staff can correct me, that hadn't received again the highest interest out of all the work plans. I'm too excited about the hate crimes legislation, but I know that also is facing some obstacles. I know that it's going to go back and be reviewed, but hopefully that will finally get the ground and the tracking that it definitely needs for the state of Oregon. The new national entity, the new civil rights entity called the League of United Latin American Citizens will take an interest in that legislation. We'll take an interest in coming to talk to the bodies that do this kind of work. For your time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. First, I'd like to congratulate our member, Juan Carlos, on his election as president to the newly formed committee, and looking forward to seeing some good use of that in the community.
Thank you.
Second, I feel called to respond to what's been going on here because it has involved my committee on several occasions. When I say my committee, I'm sorry, that's not a proper term. The Committee on Policy Screening Review Committee. On several different occasions, people have come to the committee and voiced their concern about homelessness and the police action or inaction or involving the use of laws to enforce trying to get rid of homeless people from the downtown area. So I'm going to share with you my experience, which is about 40 years of experience in dealing with homeless people in and around different aspects of that social ill. There are so many varied reasons, and too many to go into here, so I'm not going to do that. But I will tell you that you cannot generalize. You cannot say homeless people choose to be homeless and the behavior gets them in that situation. But you cannot also say in the same breath that homeless people are people who are victimized and need our help, and so we should help them. I think there is a multitude of reasons why people are involved in in homelessness. I think the problem is that we have to ask each person individually, which I try to do. I didn't get involved in an administrative level. I didn't look at numbers on papers. I talked to people individually. And when I spoke to them, there are so many different reasons, but some people actually do want to be left alone on the street. This is where they want to live. They want to live their life free of any encumbrances or anybody telling them what to do or where to go. And that's where we run into trouble, because when they choose to do that, it infringes on other people's rights, and we have to strike a balance of keeping everybody happy. We're all citizens, we all share in the beauty of the state, and we have to understand that everybody has to be able to have equal access and equal rights. So there are many, many reasons, and crime is one of them, substance abuse is another, decision to stay homeless. People who are just unfortunate. A good friend of mine, as I mentioned, was just out of hard luck, living out of his car, trying to get a job. When he finally did get a job, he got a place, and he's, worked himself out of that situation. And so there are good people out there, and there's certainly no reason to classify them one way or the other. But I think we make a mistake in trying to attack the people who end up helping a lot of these people. I mean, and literally helping them with clothing and shoes and places to stay, and to classify the act of what people view as a few people to be the policy of a department is making a big mistake. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I did read Joe's article, or his editorial, that Carter sent out. I gave all the links to it, and I read through, at least up to that point, the comments that were attached to it, which were quite interesting reading. I think those might have been sometimes a little more interesting, or definitely a little more inflammatory than Joe's article. Definitely more inflammatory than Joe's article was. I haven't read them recently, so I don't know how many more have been added there, but they were definitely mostly on two camps on both sides.
52 as of today.
52. That's more than I read. But I know it stirred up a lot of comment back and forth, so I thought that was very good. Juan Carlos, I wanted to congratulate you on your new presidency for the, I want to make sure I got it right, the League of United Latin American Citizens.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That's great.
Okay. Sorry, I had a brain lapse the first time, that's why I made us go another way. Okay, so animal services. Juan Carlos, so do you want to discuss this at a full commission meeting?
I think it'll be a good idea. I think that there's a lot of interest out there.
Okay.
The interesting piece is that how it came about, the email that I'm referring to, Commissioners, there was an issue with air conditioning at one of the facilities, and I received several inquiries about it, and I just forwarded that one chain of emails to our chair, because I know that the Police Commission doesn't get involved in that, but with the chain of emails was a question about how the Police Commission will be involved in that process, so it's back on your court.
Okay. So, did Carter, were you copied on that email? Yeah. Well, step one, I'll forward the email to Carter and other said police individuals, so that'll get to your attention if you've not seen it.
Thank you,
Wait,
Madam Chair.
do you know the email he's referring to offhand?
About the heating system out there?
No?
There were hundreds of emails
Oh,
about the
okay.
heating system. I'm familiar with it.
Okay. Okay, well then, I probably won't do that. But number two, how about we put this on our April agenda after this first meeting, so we can talk about how that went and get a base for the conversation? Does that sound okay, Juan Carlos?
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, cool. Second, okay, so capturing public comments, I want to respond to that. So that was given to the outreach committee. So if anyone has dropped the ball, it's our whole committee. So I think one way that everyone felt like we were starting to do that was starting to do the community dialogues at the end of the meetings. Is that accurate? We used to not like we did. Oh, okay, just kidding. Well, we tried to improve that. If anyone has any other ideas, please email outreach members / bring it up in here. I'm currently at a loss of what to do. I don't know. So if anyone else does, just bring it up. Juan Carlos.
Well, you don't mind me, who's chairing that committee? I'm out of the forum. How much time?
James?
You know, as this commission has been slowly but surely, it seemed like being restricted on what we do as far as any type of support, and it has nothing to do with EPD. I think the problem is with City Council. City Council, what value, because this is not, this body was not designed specifically to support EPD. It was an advisory to the City Council and also advisory for the police, for EPD. The City Council made all the appointments. If they feel that this body is not worthy, and which is evident because of the lack of funding support. And again, I disagree that they should dump this on EPD and say, okay, the police commission is in your budget and stuff. I think that was wrong the way they did that, and they have a habit of doing that. They're trying to do something like that to eWeb again. So they're saying that we want this, but yet they're not funding, they're not providing the support. And I think as a full commission, I think that we need to address this and get it back over to City Council and let them know that we feel like we've been slighted for whatever reason, and it's unfair that they should put this all on EPD when we are supposed to be a separate body, not under EPD. As it look, we're part of EPD. So it's a misconception out there as far as the public is concerned, and I think they need to be held accountable. I had to get that off, I'm sorry.
Well, Carlos.
Oh, all right, I thought it was all right. So, I want to just add to Commissioner Manning's comment in that city manager also figures into the people that we advise to. The perception of us being independent, as an independent body, that's something that we have to continuously be aware of. You know, that's something that I brought up even with this wonderful facility. You know, I know that even EPD was thinking about opening this room for community meetings. The intent is great. There is nothing against that. In fact, I'm glad, I'm pleased that in the planning process, they were thinking about the inclusion of the community. But the fact is that there's a lot of people that they do not want to come because we're meeting here. Now, that decision has been made, and I respect that. I expressed my disappointment last time. The motion that was made until the city hall, finds a new home. Well, that's going to be several years down the road. But again, I want to respect that. Our ability to do advising is also a concern of mine. Where do we start advising? If it's not just to EPD, it's not just to the chief. And I think the chief will appreciate, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but I think he will appreciate that we actually bring more and we're more active. The city council does need to bring more clarity and resources.
Yeah.
Thank you. So getting back to the topic of how do we better respond to public comment, I don't know about public comment specifically. I mean, there are times when data is asked for, and generally, if it's not an onerous request, I think that the commission has entertained and asked to entertain those requests. I think if individual commissioners hopefully feel empowered, if they do have a comment on that subject that's raised, that they respond to it during the meeting. One way that I have one tactic that I've tried in a couple of meetings lately is when it's a subject that's appropriate for, there's something being discussed in the meeting, I'll ask to poll the audience in several cases. I've done that in the public outreach committee where there was a question that I was interested in what the members of the public that were present at the meeting, I was interested in their opinion. I did that again today in the DPZ meeting. So there are other ways to get at and have a conversation with the public sometimes than just your traditional, we sit at the table, the public comments, and then we feel like somebody has to answer the question or respond right away. Sometimes that's going to happen, and sometimes there's other ways to interact with the public rather than just these rote methods that we might use. So I thought it was great that we were able to ask the public their opinion in the middle of the meeting. It didn't take too much extra time in either case, and they were able to give input in a very short time frame that we otherwise would not have received from them. So that's one way to do it.
Thank you. So we will keep that in our minds, and if anyone has any ideas, bring it up. Otherwise, I don't really know what to do.
Send them to you or to him?
Oh, Joe.
Joe?
Yeah, not me. And also on, James, on your topic, Tamara and I have a meeting on the books next week to discuss resources, and so we will provide an update on that. I'm with you as far as us not getting what we need, but we did say that we could get by without what we need last year, so we are in an interesting situation because we were a little overconfident in what we could do by ourselves. So if you're comfortable with it, we'll bring that topic back up in April.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So that's it from items from commissioners, and so now we have presenters from Women's Space. So could you introduce yourselves?
I'm Megan Conley, and I'm the Director of Advocacy Services over at Women's Space.
And I'm Christine Enkin, and I'm the coordinator of the Lake County Domestic Violence Council, working for Women's Space.
Thank you. So do you prefer questions at the end or during?
Well, I'm not sure. We were invited to provide, I kind of felt like it was sort of opening a door to conversation between Women's Space and the Police Commission on response to inter-partner violence situations by the police. And so we, Carter had forwarded us what the actual acting policy is, and I'm not so sure we have an entire presentation. My way of doing things is more of having a conversation, so if we could have a conversation, that would be great. We did take some notes. I supervise a good portion of our direct service advocates, and so at a meeting, I kind of passed this out to people and got feedback. And actually, this is police week in my life, and so we just met with the sheriff's office, Christine and I, the other day. And so I learned a little bit more about countywide, how the sheriff is responding, and an interesting thing to me was that the Sheriff Turner was saying that the Oregon statutes are pretty clear on how police should respond, and that because the statutes are so clear that the Sheriff's Department actually doesn't have a written policy because it would be really redundant, and every time a statute changed, they would have to rewrite their policy. And so I was kind of curious. I hadn't really put those two things together, but I was curious as to whether the Eugene, what Carter had forwarded to us with the Oregon statutes, if this is modified at all from the statutes on a state level for the city, or if this is just the state statutes. Do we know? It kind of looks like, now that I'm looking at it with that new information, that it looks like maybe this is the state statutes and the city has the same approach that the sheriff's office does, that creating a new policy or one that just mirrors the state statutes because they're clear. Right. But so I'm wondering, it's based on the state statutes, right? Yes. So do we know, are there any differences? Okay. Well, so that would be a good place to start, because I thought that was interesting. It's either a time-saving measure to not reinvent the wheel and make a new policy specific to our demographic population. Or it's an opportunity to look at kind of national best practice and see where there might be holes in how our city, because we can all walk around with a piece of paper and then we can talk about what's really happening in each individual case. So those are kind of something. I've worked at Women's Space since 1999, and I'm not sure how often we've been involved in this discussion, and I'm really excited to be a part of the conversation. So that's what I have to say about it right now.
As the coordinator of the council, we have about 120 members, community members or representatives from service provider agencies, public and nonprofit in the community. And so we're working with all of these members to try to look at our response to DV and the whole continuum of services and response and who does what when. And this obviously is a big part of that. So when we talked to Sheriff Turner the other day, and we have a meeting tomorrow with Police Chief Jerry Smith in Springfield, I guess it's my hope that we can talk about how we can all come together and make sure that we're sort of all on the same page with regard to the response, and have an opportunity for the advocates to have input with regard to their experience in DV cases and incidents and their experience with law enforcement. So if nothing else, it might be an opportunity to come together as sort of a working group with those three agencies and Gwynedd Space to look at how we can sort of maybe review each response and then come up with some recommendations that we would put forth to each of the agencies. So,
James?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for being here. I had the opportunity to tour Women's Space, and very nice facility. Staff is very caring and stuff, and you do a lot of great work there. I'm listening to some of the opening remarks that they're making, and being Police Week and stuff, and it seems to me that they are working. It would be more beneficial from Police Week if they have direct dialogue with the police, which comes back to perhaps there's a misconception about the function of the Police Commission versus the Police Department. So I think that we need to provide a little clarity on that. Now, as far as a review of any of the policies or any of the activities that governs under EPD, then of course we have the Policy Screening and Review Committee that does that. But as far as us doing any interpretation of any of the ordinance or any of the laws or anything like that, I think that that's a little bit above our pay grade.
Well, and I might be mistaken, because I think that that's what Carter had said, with this is just the beginning of a conversation, and anything like policy review, that this was a policy that's going to be reviewed by the policy committee, I think is what I heard at some point. So, and because I personally have never been invited to the police commission meeting, and I understand that you are not the police, but you are an overseeing body or an informing body for the police, a conduit of information, possibly. And so I was under the impression that we would come here and just begin a conversation, that any policy review or policy changes would be done by a specific committee some other time. And so I'm not sure essentially what feedback we have about the information that Carter forwarded us is that about victim safety always and better accountability. And I'm not sure if this is the place to discuss that, or if this is I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I had a question. I don't know if I misunderstood what you said. Did you understand that there were differences in the way that the Sheriff's Department is enforcing the law in the Eugene Police Department, or did I
Absolutely not. No, I don't think there's any differences. I think every individual case plays out differently. But I think what I learned on Tuesday is that because the state mandate on a state level is so clear, that the Sheriff's Office didn't reinvent the wheel and make like a local Lane County, this is how we respond. They just follow the statutes.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. Oh, no problem.
And the Police Commission has reviewed this policy, for those of you that haven't been on as long as I have, several times since I've been on the commission, and not recommended any changes. And I think the reason why is what you're saying.
Right, because it's so in line with the state mandates.
It is very clear for us what the requirements are.
Right.
So how do you think that policy and the state law play out in our community as far as the policy being enforced or law enforcement's involvement in domestic violence?
Well, I think, again, because each individual survivor that we work with is such a, they're an individual, their situation is really unique, it's different from anybody else's. So I think, for the most part, that we see a lot of consistency in response. I think that our advocates would say that they have a good rapport with the EPD when working with them. We have some advocates who work more directly with the police and detectives in cases. And I think overall that things are going well. And I think that what we, as funding and a system that can hold batters accountable, even if it's keeping them in jail for a little bit longer, as we lose jail beds, we see that system of accountability kind of drop off. And so I think that would just be, on a local level, making sure that we are at every time that the police are going out to a domestic violence situation, that they are ensuring victim safety, making sure at every step in the policies and procedures of how they respond. And that in a county that is lacking holding people accountable, what is the police response when they go out, when they're unable to mandatorily arrest somebody or ensure victim safety? Like, what's the stopgap measure in that? So that would be...
What Megan has done is do some research around some of the other areas of the country that are looking at their DV response. And I think, we've come across some pretty interesting models. And it's not so much that there's a change in how it's done, it's enhancing what's being done and taking into consideration those factors that have sort of compromised our system, our public safety system, because of budget cuts or whatever. So it's just trying to come together and, work together and maybe establish a closer relationship and communication that keeps us in check with regard to victim safety and offender accountability or batterer accountability. So, I'm really glad to be able to be here and for Megan and her experience with advocating for the survivors and children to have this opportunity. And I just hope that we could continue in some venue or some group or committee or something to have this continued conversation and talk about maybe everyone's input and come up with strengthening the response that's more inclusive and ensures that safety and accountability piece. So,
Can I ask one follow-up question?
there's only two people.
I'll be brief. So you've been, based on what you said about jail beds, which is a really good point, have you seen an increase in demand on your services when the number of jail beds goes down, decreases, because women who might have stayed in their home are less certain that the violent offender isn't going to come right back after they're released from jail?
Well, the decrease in jail beds happened right at the time that we were also having to close, it started happening before, but when we had to close our urban walk-in services. So we are no longer officially open to have people come into our office and meet with an advocate face-to-face. We have all sorts of collaborative advocates, so we have advocates out there working, we have them in the rural areas. But at this downtown center, we aren't currently providing a full service or a best practice service. What we have found is a lot of the work we do around domestic violence is about window of opportunity, which is why our services are really crucial. It's important for an advocate to be available for a survivor at that survivor's window of opportunity when they are ready, and kind of capitalize on that. So what we're finding is there's less of a system to hold the bad person in jail. That window shrinks down. And we as advocates working with survivors have less time to ensure whether it's getting a protective order that can actually be served if the person's not in jail and not servable, then that defeats the purpose of getting the order. Less law enforcement, able to respond and enforce violations of restraining orders. And that critical safety planning window where, a survivor feels safe to go back to her home and pack up some things for her and her child, has a couple of days to call relatives, make a plan, find a new safe place to stay while their offender is held. So that's one of the things we're finding. Definitely, it's an unfortunate situation where kind of all systems are their funding is being cut right and left. So I think the actual increase to victim danger started happening as our economy started going down. Offender batterers were less frequently employed, so they were more often in the home, which gave the victim less freedom to exit.
Thank you.
Yeah. Juan Carlos?
Thank you both for coming. As Vice Chairwoman Miller said, we have been entertaining these follow-ups for years now. And the fact remains that we do have to stick with what policies and what we have to be able to work with. But there's another section that we need to talk about, which is within purview of the police commission. One is resources. The resources preferred police alternatives. But the most important one in this case, I believe, is still within our mission, which is partnership between community and the police department. Here, even though there is no specific policy that the police department has, that in fact is within our mission. This would be a wonderful partnership between EPD and the domestic abuse advocates, especially your entity. We have partnerships like that, or EPD has partnerships like that, CAHOOTS and many other entities. Problem remains resources. So that's something that obviously we can continue to advocate for. In the end, I would like to see the partnership being transformed into some kind of training for the officers, so they recognize all of this. Of course, that requires resources, but I think that kind of voice and message we can send out. I'm also worried about the victim safety, but most importantly, how to respond very effectively. I hope that the next step will also include human trafficking, because that's also big in our community. I forward a couple of names for your consideration. But again, the police department has had CIT training, crisis intervention training, and of course the verbal judo that we hear, and I'm here now in other places. I'm glad about that, but in the end, some of them that I talked to personally, they walk into a situation where there's domestic abuse or violence, and they simply do not know as far as how to connect services to them. So even though we don't have a policy, I hope that we consider encouraging a partnership with the mind of training. Thanks.
Joe?
Yeah. I guess some of my questions got answered as you were talking, but my first question was, how or do you wind up getting involved when a case comes into existence? In other words, when there's an event, are you notified? Is it only, do the police give them your information and the victim comes to you? How is that initial contact with a victim made?
So in a few different ways. So we have non-system involved survivors, which are just folks who on their own realize, like, this is a situation I need to get out of, I'm going to seek assistance from the police. So we have that population. And then we have folks who get involved because of a police response. And as it states in the state mandates, that it is, so every victim gets a domestic violence victim card. I think they're purple, they've changed colors over the years, that has, their rights as a victim and some protective order information and the Women's Space Crisis Line information on it as well. So there are these little cards that get handed out when the police respond. And then we do have some advocates. We have an advocate who works closely with the pretrial monitoring program and parole and probation. We have over the years built relationships with individual police officers who might be more likely to bring someone over. Even with the lack of our walk-in services, we would still, we have detectives and police officers call us and say, we have this person, would it be okay to bring them in? So maybe they would call the crisis line. They've been known to just come into our walk-in center, and we're all there funded to see walk-ins, but we would do it and connect with the police officer and the victim. And so those are kind of the different ways that we would connect with a victim, or how they would connect with us.
Okay. Question on a safe house.
Yeah.
Does one currently exist, or has that been defunded out of existence?
It is not defunded. We have an amazing safe house, and it is ridiculously small for the size of our county and the size of our city. We can fit, the fire marshal won't let us put any more than 22 people in there, and I think that might be pushing it. It's been the same house for 27 years. It is not adequate to meet the need, and it is the one, place.
Do you maintain any sort of review statistics, in other words, on the outcome of various cases? How many are resolved to your satisfaction? How many, the situation gets worse, how many, what sort of outcomes do you see from people entering your system?
So I think because we do many different types of advocacy, where there's, if you look at somebody's situation like a pie, there's oftentimes where we just get a slice. We get the crisis call, we get one face-to-face appointment where someone comes in and says, I think I need to get out. We get the time the police came and brought them in, but then we're not, we don't know the follow-up. And then we do case management where we see survivors from the crisis and get the opportunity to work with them through the whole thing. And so it really just varies. Every single person we meet with, it's a different situation. Oftentimes, we just get a slice, a little tiny glimpse of what's going on in their lives.
And I guess my final question is, you sort of came in asking us what we wanted from you, and I'd like to turn that around. I mean, what do you think we, either the police or the commission as a public advocacy group, could help you with?
I guess one of the things, in just, kind of how these play out in each case, because I think it's important to look at each response, and there's no way that anybody could look at every single response. But kind of the intent of the law and the letter of the law, and making sure that someone's not just trained in this and like, oh yeah, point 8A, and I'm doing that, and point CB, but like, how is this out in our city playing out, and are we doing the best as a city to keep victims safe and hold batterers accountable, which you'll hear me say like 8 million times. So I think that's, I was under the impression that we were coming to provide a little bit of feedback about what we would like to see included or what next steps were in when this is reviewed, looking at best practice. And clearly if it's from the Oregon statutes, that we're not going to be able to rewrite all of those, but on a city level, are we incorporating best practice in every single response to domestic violence call? That's what I would like. And I also would like to appreciate you for saying one of my favorite words, which is training. And I also oversee our rural program, which is funded, thankfully, from the Office of Violence Against Women. And one of the things I was talking with Sheriff Turner about is I am in the lucky spot of having training money. And even though we do many of our trainings for free, I would really, really love, and my rural team would love, to bring all law enforcement together in Lane County and have someone come and provide a training. And my timeline for that is by next spring to have, I have funding until October of 2014 for my rural program. And I am looking to coordinate a countywide law enforcement domestic violence training. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Go ahead. The one thing that studies show is that the violence in a lot of the cases, I don't know what the statistics specifically are, when a survivor is leaving or trying to leave, and then the violence escalates. And in many cases, that ends in a fatality. So it's the immediate response or the police call, but not only that, it's the ongoing protection and monitoring, trying to not anticipate, but to be ready to try to intervene and do some safety intervention if there are red flags going up. And so all of that is the kind of thing that Megan's talking about with the training, is to continue the intervention over time in ways that law enforcement is ready to respond to the situation as it comes up. So it's not just the immediate incident or the police call, but it's trying to look at situations and, as a community, be able to look at how we can respond to that in order to ensure safety and the accountability piece. So restraining orders are obviously an option. As Megan said, with the lack of jail beds, if they violate a restraining order, chances are there's not going to be any kind of consequence or leverage there. So we really, in my mind, have to be taking a look at how the whole climate has changed with regard to this, and whether or not what we've been doing is going to serve what we need to be doing because of these community changes, economic changes, budget cuts, all of these factors that play into it, so. Thank you. Jim?
Thank you both for coming. You mentioned that there's a window of opportunity that you have typically. And I know there's so many different variables that are going to play into that. But assuming that the offender has been removed, maybe into police custody, let's say, from that point, once they've been removed, at least for a while, how long typically is that window? How large is that window for you to be able to get the resources, get the victims to a situation where they can be safe?
Well,
I know that may vary a
yeah,
lot.
so, but I'm just trying to kind of line up all the different variables. So if you took like an average case, kind of a wacky idea, but an average case, and you look at what the potential resources are. So we have potential resources of, is there room in our safe house? Because that could be an immediate, we have a safe place to put this family. And we also take single women, we take teenage boys up to 17. We're as flexible as we can with our little space. So that's a quick, that's a 24-hour turnaround. The lining up, whether we're networking them through the series of domestic violence shelters within the state or getting them relocated out of the state, that could potentially be where we would provide emergency motel to keep them safe, or if the person was in custody for at least overnight where they could return home and then come and seek services from us. I would say if they were not needing to locate new safe and stable housing, that safety window is like 4 to 5 days, because it would either be that they're coming into our house or that we are providing a short-term emergency motel stay, which is only 2 nights with FEMA money that we get, and working on the next step, whether it's an aunt from Florence who's come and pick them up, or that they can go stay with their brother up in Portland, whatever that next step is. But before the stuff, extreme decrease in jail beds, typically it was, that we could guarantee that they'd be held at least 2, maybe 3 days, depending on the charges. If we're taking an average case, which again is an interesting concept. But
Well, yeah.
no, I know, I totally get the point of it. It's just so fun, it's funny in my head to think of what.
Well, I guess where I was coming from was, and you kind of answered it. It takes 4 to 5 days to line up all the resources and really get the safe, but yet the offender is only kept for 2 to 3 days.
Previously, and now it's not even.
And now it's not even. So obviously they don't match.
Yeah.
So the offender's out long before you can, in almost all cases, have the opportunity to provide the resources that are needed. That's kind of what I want to find out.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Has it, in your experience, has it ever been the other way around? Have in the
I've got
past?
all the time on my hands to help somebody get safe.
Well, no, not that. No.
I wish.
That the offenders were kept long enough.
I think in the most extreme cases, the ones that we've seen go to court and the offender goes to prison eventually, I think where there is, actually there are a few cases, and it was the ones, I think Joe, is that right? Your name is Joe?
Yeah.
You were asking what that piece looks like in terms of working with police, or how much of a situation do we get to see, from beginning to end. So in cases where the police are involved, we've had it from beginning to end where a detective brings a surveillance in, because we are a safe place that the person feels safe talking with an advocate and the officer, taking the report, going from there, and seeing an offender actually end up with prison time. Those are times where I've seen that. I think, for as big a county as we are, we're also still a small city. And I think that, an offender being released back in is just, their ongoing accountability for an offender who has been held for any period of time and then released, their anger level, their escalation is huge, and they're going to retaliate against their victim. So even if we hold them for a little bit longer and then release them, safetying up the family is only as good as it balances against the abuser's escalation and anger and retaliation. So it's kind of, there's no...
It's kind of a balancing act because the longer they're held, the more...
Right. Because it's going to be
the more violent they're
victim's
probably
fault.
going to be when they
It's
come
the
out.
victim's fault that they've been put in jail anyway. And so if they're released and there's no, we have the ankle bracelet system, we have some systems in place. But again, the ankle bracelets, I think it was Sheriff Turner who said those are only, we can always tell where the ankle bracelet is. But that doesn't mean we know where the offender is all the time. So I think that can be an issue too. And what we've seen, like what Christine was saying about the danger level escalating when somebody decides to leave an abusive relationship, it can be just as devastating once the system is trying to hold a batterer accountable, but can't do it all the way. The retaliatory actions are towards the victim. So.
Thank you.
James?
Yes, again, thank you so much for being here. I have a couple of questions. One, perhaps the chief can answer that, and perhaps not. And this is when the police escort or refer a person, how is that done? Do the actual police bring the survivor or the injured party to your location, or do they just go voluntarily? The next part is that, do you provide EPD or law enforcement with pertinent cards that have detail on how to contact you in case they are abused? And the third one is that, how many of these abuse cases come from the city versus the county?
Okay. So I think I'm going to answer those in reverse order. So in terms of county versus city, I do not think in my 13 years or however many years it's been that someone from the county has brought a survivor in here in Eugene. Although I've worked with sheriffs in some of the rural satellite offices that we have. And so here in Eugene, it's been primarily EPD, police, and detectives bringing somebody in. And the way that they connect them with us is the detective would either call the advocate that they have that they work with, like through pretrial or over at Kids First, and let that see if that advocate's available to meet with them and the victim. We have had officers show up where they have just brought somebody from a domestic violence situation and with no call, which is fine because we're there, and bring them in and say, this is a little bit about what's going on. There have been times where there's not as much, it's not like I don't know what you call it, like a soft handoff, like here's this person and these are the things we know about the danger level, or sometimes there's not as much information as an advocate would need when the police have come and said, here's this person, we couldn't find her boyfriend, but here she is, and so that can kind of go either way, but we have had instances where there's prior notice, we know the police are going to bring somebody in, and then we go from there. One thing that is really complicates matters is that although we have a 24-hour crisis line, we don't necessarily have a 24-hour in-person response. So as an advocate, ideally, I would love to have a team of advocates who are ready to go out anytime the police call and said, hey, we're going out on a call, send your advocate over. In a perfect world, that would be great, because then we can have an advocate on the scene for the survivor, and that oftentimes, because it's primarily female victims who are not, and the advocate would not be in uniform. There's something about somebody in a uniform responding to somebody's private personal business versus a regular person. And so I think that's, not that police aren't regular people, but when you put on the uniform, it creates a little barrier. This is what we get for taking this long. But I think, so I mean, ideally, that's like the perfect thing, but that's like pie in the sky, and we've never had that in the whole time I've worked there. But we do have, between 9 and 5, we have, we have the advocate who responds to Kids First, who is also available to respond when either a detective or a police officer calls to respond to a situation. And the other question you asked was about the victim card, and so I think that is countywide, and I think there are those little purple cards that's like know your rights, and it's a card that's given to everybody, every victim at a scene, whether there's a mandatory arrest or not. And the mandatory arrest thing is an interesting thing right now, because I think when that does happen, that's like a blessing and a curse, because the accountability piece is so short-lived right now because of the budget crisis, that's a quick turnaround time, especially if it's an incident that happens in the middle of the night. If they are actually booked and not released until after arraignment, that leaves you like maybe 12 hours. So there's not a huge window of opportunity for that.
The other issue with mandatory arrest is the assurance that the primary aggressor in the situation is identified. If you have a survivor with some, DV history in this relationship, and she may be experiencing some PTSD symptoms, and how they're manifesting might be, the fight, flight, or freeze. She may be trying to fight back, but that doesn't necessarily mean she's the primary aggressor. And that's not to make an excuse, but I think it's sort of complicated and delicate at the same time, where, it's crucial that on the scene there's, assessment, comprehensive assessment, whatever you want to call it, to determine the primary aggressor and understand and put it into a context that is appropriate. So some of the research and information we found has like a checklist or a tool that they use to identify a primary aggressor in the situation. And so that's the other piece of it, is making sure that there's a kind of inclusive response in that, determining sort of the context of the situation and an appropriate response for all the parties involved. So,
okay, just one final follow-up. With the relationship of the response from EPD, and as far as any of the domestic violence, how would you rate EPD as far as their involvement in these types of domestic type situations? Do you think that they are providing a adequate service? Do you think that they're very responsive? Do you think that they are caring? How do you rate the relationship?
I think in terms of their response to domestic violence, it's kind of, I'm looking at a little continuum in my head. I would say like an 8, and then what I would like to see more of is more of that collaboration, working together. But we don't necessarily have the advocate staff to do that. But in a conversation capacity, and training capacity, we would like to be way more involved than we are with EPD around domestic violence.
Okay, so you would like to be a part of the actual training for officers, or want a review a review of their training?
Well, I think that it would just be, I think that there's a lot of things that advocates don't know about how the police respond.
So
I think it's opening that door. Okay. I think, again, I know I keep referring to the meeting with the sheriff, but it was really enlightening because, we can sit over in our house and talk all sorts of stuff about how we don't think the police did this right, or the sheriff didn't do that right, or they really should have done this better. But until we as an agency and the police as an agency start having that communication, using specific case scenarios and saying, what happened in this, point A, B, C, where could we have done something different, where could things have been better, where could we have worked together more closely. So I think it's just, like I said, I've been at Women's Day since 1999, and I think at times we've had closer relationships and conversations with the police, but I think that, especially with all of our lack of resources, that, we should really kind of start a new chapter and start having conversations like that, because it could be that the police think that we're doing everything totally wrong. Like we don't know that because we haven't had that conversation. Or what would EPD like to see us as an agency do differently? Do we need to be more accessible? Are there things, I think there's been barriers in the past, but I think that we're definitely in a place where we recognize the importance of collaboration.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bob?
Yes, I'd like to echo, thank you for coming tonight to us, and more importantly, thank you for what you do in the community to help survivors of these situations. And my concern is if, given the constraints of funding, which we are seeing at all levels of interest in this community, I'm wondering what we can do, or what the Commission can do, or us as a community even can do to help you get the word out better, or to help the system work better without involving funding. We were presented by staff, the police department, that there's one detective assigned to screen the domestic violence cases that come across. So I know what that means. Unfortunately, the reality is...
closely with that detective.
Right.
So.
The reality is, it can't possibly get the kind of attention that you'd like to see. But given that, what would you suggest, or can you tell us?
Well, a couple of things for me. We have working committees for the council and the Batterer Intervention Committee. We've been talking about a fatality review team, which is a model or an approach to looking at a DV case in this area from the point of the fatality and work a chronology back, trying to identify, services that were involved and incidents that occurred through police reports or emergency reports, room reports, and go back. But in my mind, it seems like let's not wait for a fatality. And if we can do a multidisciplinary team of people in the community that work on this continuum of services and do a case consultation, sort of looking at preparing a chronology that led up to a hospitalization of a survivor, or maybe the child was injured, or the children were taken from the survivor because of what's going on with the domestic violence, or he ended up in prison or something, and just take that case and just work with it and go through it and see what happened and what we did well and what we need to look at improving for any of the people at the table. That would be one of the things I just want to let you know that we're kind of working on. And then the second thing is going back to what I said about in the interim, if the EPD is open to the idea of meeting with Women's Space and the sheriff and Springfield PD and even other jurisdictions in the county to talk about, just everybody at the table, share what they know, what's worked, what's not. The essence of the the policy is here, and that stands. But again, it's about enhancing the response and taking these other factors into consideration that have impacted our ability to respond and for the safety and the accountability piece. So training is great, but I think the ongoing conversation and a mechanism to be able to do that has to be in place.
And then I just have one thing to add, which is what I say anytime that I have the opportunity to talk to people about domestic violence in our community, is that we all as individuals can work to be allies for people who are in these situations, which means being informed, making sure your friends and family and loved ones are safe, knowing how to respect the fact that this is something that might be happening in their own private personal life, and that there might be a lot of shame around that. We are not a society that encourages people to feel comfortable asking for help, and to recognize that. And I figure that if I do this in a room full of people every couple weeks, that I'm building community allies who will speak up against domestic violence, either in their personal lives or when they see it in the public.
And as a community, I think the question, and I run across a lot of people who want to go to the question, why doesn't she just leave? Why does she stay? And I think that she is the expert in her own safety. She has lived that and knows, that staying may be the safest thing that she could do. And so, like Megan said, respect that and support her with regard to that. And the question really needs to be, why does he do what he's doing? And trying to look at services and support for the offender to try to address that, so that maybe we break the cycle and it doesn't happen again. So.
Thank you. Tamara? So I apologize if you had mentioned this already. What's the funding source for Women's Space Safe?
Oh, we have many, many funding sources. So we are a United Way agency, and then we have private donations. We received some money from private foundations as well, like the Oregon Community Foundation, Bill Healy's, and different foundations like that. And then some of our rural program is funded by the Office of Violence Against Women. Our Turning Point program, which is our long-term case management program, provides a year of weekly visits, home visits, goal setting, things like that. It's also funded by the Office of Violence Against Women. What else do we have? We don't have enough.
Do you get Human Services Commission?
Yeah, HSC, we get CAC,
So
HSC,
the Human Services Commission?
ODSBS, VAWA, VOCA, all of those from the state level.
You're speaking in acronyms, they're not going to know what you're saying.
It's okay. It's a whole bunch of money.
The Violence Against Women Act had funding in it, so when that got stalled at the end of last year, that was the
Right. It's the alphabet soup funding is what we call it, the HSC, and it's
and what Peggy, our executive director, would say, the funding cuts that we have experienced, it's a little bit here and a little bit here, and death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
So our budget has been reduced over the past year and a half, about 25%, $400,000 out of a $1.7 or $1.8 million budget. So we are trying to be more efficient and more effective with what we have, and come up with creative ways of maybe trying to look at doing things differently. But we don't want to do that in isolation of the community. We want to be in collaboration with the community.
So I did have another question. So, and as far as restraining orders, one of the roles that you have in your organization is advocacy and help with the paperwork. Is that you guys that help with that?
Well, so actually it's the Victim Services through the DA's office. It has the restraining order clinic. So this county is unique because there are domestic violence service providers in the state of Oregon who do like restraining order clinics just at their at their local women's space kind of place. And so we're fortunate to have Victim Services here at the DA's office, where they have not only trained victim advocates, but a crew of volunteer advocates too, who can help with filling out. We do, particularly with Latina survivors, we send one of our Spanish-speaking advocates with them. The forms are not in Spanish. None of the forms are in Spanish for court, which is really a barrier for many of our Latina survivors. And I get that, because you have to translate them back into English for the judge. So that's, we won't go down that road tonight. But so the restraining order piece happens primarily, we always encourage someone to bring a friend or have an advocate with them. And unfortunately, we don't have an army of advocates to be there. But I did hear from an advocate today that said we need to do something about the restraining order and the contested hearing orders on Monday mornings, because there's she said there's just 25 women there all by themselves, and we should be there, and we don't have enough people to be there.
Thank you.
We've got a question. thanks also for being here. You did a great job.
Thanks for having us.
Are you seeing, well, first of all, do you take in women who've been, or people who've been, or the victims of domestic violence who are not reporting the violence to the police, provide services?
Oh, yeah.
And what's the percentage of your people you help?
Studies show about 50%.
Yeah, and it was definitely higher. Non-system involved survivors, I have to come up with this whole new classification since we don't have our walk-in services, but that's the piece we're missing. We're getting all the survivors that child welfare is involved in their lives, and many of them, the police have responded through the Kids First system over there, where we provide an advocate for every victim whose kids are being interviewed. We send an advocate over to every appointment. So actually what we're missing, at least in the urban setting downtown Eugene, is right now, well, since January, in not being able to provide that walk-in service, we are missing the non-system involved survivors. And we were running an average of between 85 and 90 new survivors seeking services each month, and providing around 150 individual advocacy appointments each month for continued clients. And this is really just sad, but we provided 34 new client services in February and about 53 advocacy appointments, and that's completely unfunded. That's just us knowing that we need to meet a need even though we're not funded to do it.
One of the concerns law enforcement in Oregon has right now is that we're underserving undocumented aliens. A couple things happen in the law right now that sort of create a fear in that population to call police for help. Are you seeing more or less? Are those numbers changing?
We actually are fortunate enough, through our rural funding, we have a Latina advocate. And one of the things we can do with our rural advocates, because they're only like 3/4 funded by that rural funding, and women's space pays the rest, the 0.25, we're allowed to kind of borrow a rural advocate one day a week to provide urban services, a little wiggle room in there. So our Latina services are, in the urban setting, are stronger than our English speaking, like our Latina walk-in services. We have the advocate who works with Spanish speaking survivors at the Safe House, and our rural Latina advocate and a Latina case manager. And between the three of those amazing advocates, they have created this whole system where any Spanish speaker coming in or calling and needing assistance, their needs are being met, and we navigate some of those additional barriers that they face due to their status or due to fear of police and law enforcement. And actually our experience has been, I'd say primarily, I know I've worked a lot with Springfield police around for Latino survivors, and I don't have like a current case that comes to mind with EPD, but because of the additional barriers, they just take more work, those situations, and advocates love a little more work, so we pay attention and do some super collaboration around those situations.
And there's something in VAWA, the reauthorization that just passed and was signed by the president about survivors, immigrant or undocumented survivors. So I think there's a little bit more protection for them to be able to come forward. Not coming forward and being unsafe, and so they've addressed that. I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but I do know that that was one of the provisions in the reauthorization that passed. So.
Yeah, that'll help. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so at this time we have 2 more people in the queue, but we are out of time. Well, we're not out of time, but the time to ask their question and someone responds, we will be out of time. So instead of having awkwardness, I'm doing this. So you can extend the time or let the queue expire. Those are your options.
I'll move to extend the time to allow the 2 people in the queue to speak. or question,
No time limit?
to allow the two people to,
Okay,
no, just to let them give their questions.
okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, sounds good. Juan Carlos, you're next.
But thank you.
I'm fine, okay.
I really appreciate the question or the comment and question that the chief presented, because in general, what I'm seeing according to my experience, and by the way, I'm back at being the president of the Board of Central Latin America. I know a partner of many years with Women Space, and obviously always looking for resources and ways to do the work better. We, in fact, are making several assumptions. The assumption is that there is already contact between EPD and your services. But in some cases, there is no contact. In some cases, there's lack of understanding about the victim's rights, where to go help. And in some cases, they go back to the abuser. They don't know the rights. They're afraid of the police. If they call the police, they take their breadwinner away, and then end up with the whole family being broken up. So all those things come into play and makes your job harder. It occurs to me that Central Latino will probably need to do a better job communicating with your agency, because we didn't know about some of the services in the rural areas that you're talking about. Again, I want to emphasize about the training. I think is important. But it occurs to me that you came here tonight, if I understood correctly, to see about making some comments or recommendations on the actual policy. I don't want to go away with not taking advantage of that, of these gems that you're bringing forward. And although tonight we're not looking at the actual policy, we're not reviewing it, I hope that the policy screening and review committee, if and when that's appropriate, will capture this kind of feedback. I will be interested in actually getting your feedback if you have it. I am interested in getting, reading and getting that kind of feedback, if not the police commission. So by all means, thank you for, and I will be willing to get it.
I appreciate that. And I know that our Latina advocates have been working really hard to repair our relationship with Central Latino Americana, and we are building bridges in that direction so that we can all work together to serve Latino survivors in the community.
I think one of the staff are coming to do a presentation to our Latina group, and we've all been invited to the staff to come in.
We have stellar staff, so they really work hard.
You're being recorded, by the way.
That's all right. They are stellar. I would say that every day.
Okay, Joe.
Okay, yeah, I have two items. You brought up the issue of working with the abusers. What sort of materials, programs, policies, thoughts, or the like that you have in place? And what would you like to see as, if you had a wish list and, you could get your stuff, what would you like to see in that area?
Well, so for batterers, and this is kind of Christine's world, I am definitely not an expert on batterers. I have worked with thousands of women in this county, and I have not worked with a single batterer. I've had run-ins with them and words, but I'm not an expert on that. And so I will defer to Christine on batter accountability.
We just had a battery prevention committee meeting before I came here. So there's 3 programs in the county right now that are actively offering battery intervention programs. There's Christians as Family Advocates, CAFA, Choices, and in Cottage Grove, South Lane Mental Health is in the process of having their battery intervention program approved by the local supervisory authority team. And Choices is currently doing what they're terming as the reunification program. And so I've been at this job for about 10 months, and I think that there's some, pretty serious concerns on the advocates' part with regard to reunification of the perpetrator and the survivor and how that goes. So we've had discussions, and today we had a very good discussion around the need for inclusivity, where advocates from Women's Space would be sitting at the table having a review process of their programs, especially the reunification program, to ensure that that perspective and input is in the program curriculum and material that's being used. So in my position as coordinator of the council, I'm looking at trying to bridge those programs and agencies to make sure that we're all working together for the best interests of the entire family. And that includes the children, so we would be looking at possibly Relief Nursery or the Child Center to be collaborating with us around the children involved in this reunification process, where there would be developmental assessments with consideration of trauma history and the impact of domestic violence on the children, with recommendations on what might be helpful to get the child back on track, and then to have women's-based advocates supporting the survivor that's involved with the reunification program to ensure that there's that independent support aside from the better intervention program. And so we've got some good ideas, and we're working on more collaboration and doing some review and revisions to some of those programs that are more inclusive with regard to the survivor and the children. So
It's good. It's good.
on a national level, I can tell you, in fact, Washington State, their Public Policy Institute did a meta-analysis of the literature to find out about studies that were done on better intervention programs around the country. And essentially what they came up with is the traditional approach for better intervention is not working to reduce recidivism.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at others who are trying some combinations of some different models, intervention models. And so we're taking a look at that. But the Policy Institute is recommending to the state of Washington that they not refer offenders to better intervention programs anymore until this gets addressed, and because it's not been successful in reducing recidivism. So I think it's all up in the air as far as, kind of looking at different ways, alternative ways of doing this and addressing the batter.
And I think it's true to say that looking at recidivism rate, that reoffending rate for graduates of batter intervention programs is one of the keys to tell whether they're working. And I'm not sure in this county how well those recidivism rates have actually been tracked, so we could actually have some sort of measurement in this county.
Yeah. I was encouraged to hear you talk about the sort of multi-generational transfer problem, in the sense of, the kids of batterers becoming batterers and that whole set of problems. I think that's really important there. But the one other thing that I wanted to look at was the whole question of priorities, because this, to a degree, is a political group. The United States incarcerates 1.6 million people. The war on drugs is responsible for a big chunk of that. I would, personal thought is that I would much rather see incarceration resources be used for batterers as opposed to being used for people for possession of marijuana or similar types of things. Do you have any thoughts on, essentially, if you have limited resources, what sorts of things does a community make as its priorities for solving its problems, versus what sorts of things do you sort of just let go as not worth it? Do you have any thoughts in that area?
Madam Chairman, point of order.
Yes?
We are all straying far from the topic of discussion here, and I don't think it's relevant to ask our guests to comment on their political issues that have really no bearing on what they've come here to speak to tonight.
I can't.
I'll withdraw the question.
Go with your gut, Caitlin.
You withdrew the question. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. We have your contact information, and we will follow up on the specific policy questions that you have.
I just have my notes, so that's all.
And we're on a break, everyone else.
Can we put our notes together and maybe send you?
You can just write on the back, I'll give you another card.
Oh, everyone, the microphone is still on.
Hi.
Warning. Thank you.
Hey, the guy I'm going to introduce you to, I work with producer training, is what I'm here.
I commented on
This is Lieutenant Nate Reynolds. He's got a business card.
All right. Actually, I remember having this in.
The sort of difficult.
Oh, hi, Parker. Right.
You gotta figure out. So what we're basically doing by hand is transitioning us from.
Giving her a bad time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why? I was like, you. As you know, I'm just I'm sorry. No, I was like walking around.
Yeah, and I can actually get that away with training and safety.
Thank you. Thank you.
Loaded me up with the whole, like, how to train and like, I have, like,
No, it's totally different.
Isn't that
Yeah, no, I think it's important. I agree. We were on
I was having, I don't know.
ODOT things about Beltline, but,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna make some comments here, and Claire, you feel free to snap me down if you want. I'm like, I'm standing by.
A bunch of series or something like that, kind of break down all the pieces. And again, whenever it's short staff.
Yeah, you don't, we didn't.
Voicemail from your husband.
I mean, my husband.
Oh, I thought you meant I had one. I'm like, I have a voice. He has a voice.
I wonder, who's calling?
He's just trying to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
He just let me know that,
He's not
the website, I should have seen the email that you set up.
He's a great cook.
Oh, okay.
He's an excellent baker, a good candy maker. and-
I'm horrible. I've been meaning to do it.
He made me a house sandwich with chicken that he made yesterday that was a hot wing chicken and cut up into this breast hot dog. He also put Then he wrapped it in a tin foil and put it on there. So a couple of weeks ago, on our agenda is stuff that I volunteer on. Oh, yeah. Whenever really
Here we have.
Of course it is.
So what we have to do.
Like, hey, this is for my crazy husband. Did you see my email about
I always
access force packet?
Yeah, so I would go like, send me email back. And
I do.
I think the openness to, looking at our own house as well. That was my traditional. I'm not sure that what I think is and I'm hopeful, everybody, I'm doing this, so, that if we are creating sort of structure, there may be some funding out there. If we're doing something that are different than just the traditional kind of thing. And I see the multidisciplinary cases, I think is something that should
Because we've, trained and learned, the piece that I like to do is interactive, where you're trying to find what's that it came from a conversation he said, yeah, there's, the annual count is severely low. Access to and figures that maybe. Well, he says.
I didn't know it's still back to one that you had,
The rest of them are just out in the woods.
Did he come back?
And he says, yeah, and it seems to be consistent, because George Brown
the individual that prompted the lockdown of the credit union.
That there were 1,800
Depends on it all, yeah. I mean, he was served busted papers today.
The other piece is that I also,
Simply telling him to stay away.
so any of that,
The police really can't do anything. They have to wait till he acts on it.
Right.
So, which is unfortunate.
that's his saying.
No, we haven't heard from him or seen him.
what we actually have.
We're still taking comments.
Yeah, I think you remember Wanda was talking about this guy that came down to the bank where she works.
Obviously, and I think another number is using it.
Apparently, this guy, Cal, Community Alliance of Lane County, their office in what is that?
Saying that since the conversation, was in a conversation between,
Yeah, well, it's pretty close to downtown. Anyway, this guy was writing, somebody was writing checks and stuff, and he had an account at Umpire, and he would bring up checks over there. Well, they started doing follow-up, you check with the financial institution that's over here, and they were saying that the checks were issued.
never seen a good accounting, and that was one of the things.
Whatever the postman went by and just dropped the checks off. So they acquired the checks, and somebody, him or someone else, would write the checks. He would take them to the bank, and he would try to cash it. Well, the first red flag was that his account was overdrawn. So the first thing LaWanda did when she got the check is that she called the other financial institution to find out if the check was out. And she told him that he had to bring his
parking issues.
sorry, he had to bring his account.
Congratulations. Thank you. Next one, we're going to have
$20 in there, so, which he did, and he got the rest of the money. Well, later on, he came back with another check. This is on another bank. Called him confirming, said that they couldn't confirm it, Well, the next day, he came back with another check.
Weekends okay?
This time they said, okay, well, you have to wait. That's when they found out the checks belonged to
Saturday mornings okay?
Thank you.
And the guy was sleeping out in the lobby. Well, they called the police, and the police came in. So, because he was trying to pass off bad instrument,
Is Saturday
they closed
afternoon I'm
his
okay?
account out.
What's your Saturday or
He came back again today
next Saturday I'll be visiting my
to
mother.
cash another check. They told him that his
I don't know, it's
account
like
had been
11
closed.
o'clock on Saturdays?
And he had a few choice words for him.
And I'll keep it short. So we'll have a 12 noon to go to.
Yeah.
That's perfect. And where's your 12? Where do you want to
Yeah, so,
Do you want to meet at 0 on 14th and Pearl? It's a house on the corner of 14th and Pearl's coffee.
Oh, yeah, it used to
place.
be a clothing exchange, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So 11 o'clock this Tuesday. I mean, this Saturday.
No, not really, I'm kidding. We didn't say that.
What did I say?
Nothing. I don't think it
Are you gonna get a kill on you?
I just thought that sounded good.
Yeah.
No, but like,
Oh, hi.
Bill Carrasco.
Nice to meet you.
No problem. You got my invitation. Yeah, well, I know it's fine. Just want to meet you guys.
Education, so, that's how much more he was stricken, she was a nursing home, Michael and yes, I was saying, so I had to.
That's good.
I'm going to very quick.
Wow.
Sure. What's the date?
April 4th.
Yeah.
6:30.
Okay.
And you'll start seeing it.
You understand? And so this one-
I'll send you the information. It's a public activity.
I don't mean to throw that, it just.
No, 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 but I will send you the press release. 2 years.
Yeah.
Decided to
I like how she
respect.
Yeah, it sounds like a good forum.
You like that's like a stress headache.
It's not that bad.
That's better than what I do. Sometimes I run eyes.
Yeah, like I do something that's not.
I didn't mean to. My eyes, I can't help it.
I don't do anything.
She throws her head down.
What thing you don't do?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh. You having a good day, Jen?
Appointed George as secretary.
Yes.
He's, he's going to be really great to have on here. Yeah. I think he's had a wide variety of life experience. That's good. Yeah.
Especially as a counterpoint.
As what?
As a counter.
He's been sponsored. And so now he like owns
James, how are you?
rentals and he owns like a business. You know, so he's really gone from one end of the spectrum to the other as far as, his life experience. He's been all over. And he's lived all over the country too. Didn't you say that?
Still a lot of things.
Yeah. So I'm excited about having him on.
Okay. I'm gonna swing over to the other side, so the chief is going to do his report, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't want the light beaming off the top of my head.
Back of your head. We'll all be blind. Okay, everyone make your way back to the table, please. No, you can't come in, I'm sorry.
Well, then we're not bringing it. We have for everybody.
We wanted the meeting to adjourn early.
I can learn how to.
Do you need a pointer?
I'll get by on that.
Right here.
No, I don't
Get my shirt and stuff together here.
James is George now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to become Linda.
I'll be Pete. Should I go ahead and start?
Yeah.
Well, I've got a lot of slides, so I'm going to zip through them because at the end there's, you asked about grants during our last meeting, so there's an accounting of all the grants, and I can give some explanation. Oops. So is everybody comfortable with everything I've covered so far? Okay, there we go. We had a sergeant's promotion process. We have one vacancy for sergeant right now. When we look at it, look at our variance report, our staffing variance report. We're totally staffed up on officers. We're authorized 291 sworn personnel. This is different today. This is what the count was a week ago, so it's different all the time. But I think we were at 186 sworn personnel. The vacancies are all in management. We have exactly, or more in fact, the number of police officer classifications that were authorized. But that's not bad. I always try to stay as close to zero as we possibly can because it reduces overtime and it just constantly staying up on top of the potential need that we're going to have. Anyway, so we only have one sergeant's vacancy, but in a few months, as we promote more people, there will be a need for the others. And then one of our recruits got an award at the academy, which is always nice. Commissioner Juan Carlos Valle asked if, I think that's who asked, about not just the crime-fighting operations of the department, but what the business operations are like. So this is sort of a sketch of what my days are like, and not a very complete accounting of them, but what I'll try to do is introduce the initiatives that we're working on and cost-saving measures, those kinds of things, so you get an idea of what we're doing to change the department. Anyway, these are the things I did. I attended the Asian celebration. There was a KUGM talk show about the Women in Blue program that we're running. Senate Bill 421 and 426 are the Kilcullen bills that would change how people who've committed serious offenses are handled by the courts if they can't aid in their own defense. Had some officers graduate from the State Academy. A Public Safety Coordinating Council meets once a month, and I attend those meetings. Campus is having several forums on arming police officers there. I attended one. Captain Dura attended a couple of them. I think they might be over. We have a joint labor management meeting, senior staff and the executive group of the EPEA. We meet once a month. Council workshops, NAACP's Freedom Fund dinner. There was a Caliber Press comes around about once a year and provides training to officers on street survival. And I remember when I was a patrol officer attending that, it does such a good job of describing what the possible hazards are to police that I remember thinking I wish our command staff was there. So when this comes around, I try to sit in on those. I'm on the UVO Police Chief Search Committee, and I testified about the Senate bill that would, or I think it was a House bill actually, for the alcohol impact areas of Salem. And then I was on a leadership panel with the Eugene Springfield leadership group. And these are some regular meetings I have. I mean, we prepare once a week, the execs do, for the council briefing, or council meetings, weekly council meetings. And we have an executive managers meeting once a week. Meet with senior staff once a week. I meet often with our division managers to see that we're all staying on track with our plans. There's a weekly crime briefing that I attend sometimes. It's really for the captains and the lieutenants. It's interesting to see how things are going. The captains and I have a steering committee meeting on data-led policing strategy. We're just constantly refining it. We got a long way to go to get to the vision that we have for it. So it takes this constant evaluation, assessment, and just changing the dials on it. I meet with employees regularly, one-on-one, to hear what they think about things. I attend patrol briefings occasionally. And then we have a weekly internal affairs technical meeting, so we can review all the cases that are active and hear from the investigators about the progress of those. And the division managers, the police auditor's office, and our investigators are all attend that. And then I'm on the governor's committee, Law Enforcement Contacts Policy and Data Review Committee. We've had one meeting this year, and I had a conflict. I wasn't there yet. Haven't been there yet. And then the several execs talk about the policies that affect downtown, so we're constantly getting better and better at addressing safety and development issues there. Had a promotional process, and I think I've talked about the rest. All city briefings, meetings are, city manager likes to talk to every employee in the city who's available to attend these meetings to let them know what's happening with budget and other critical issues. And I meet often with union members. That, I guess. Sorry. And then in no particular order, these are some of the newsworthy things that happen. You might remember a bunch of businesses were vandalized at the Sheldon Plaza. Some were burglaries, some were just vandalism. We've made some marijuana drug sales arrests downtown in the last couple of weeks. One of our officers ended up in an encounter with an obnoxious, intoxicated man who recently pled guilty and was sentenced in this fight he had with with the officer. Yesterday, there was a guy, who I think probably has a mental health condition, who was brandishing a firearm that, or what looked like a firearm, turned out to be a pellet gun, but that has tied up for a while. This arrests for burglary 2. Burglary 2 is a commercial burglary usually, and guy broke in and left. The business owner came back. By the time, I think the way it worked is by the time the business owner got there to check on the alarm, the suspect had returned, and so he was caught in the business. He got off scot-free, in other words. The business owner came back to check on his business, and the suspect was there. So we caught him. And then, let's see, the Campbell Club had a party. They took money at the door and had alcohol served to people, some of whom were 21. It was loud. People in the neighborhood are getting tired of the behavior of the folks who live at the Campbell Club, and they decide not to take it any longer, so they call when there's a loud party. They thought this one was louder than others. Our officers walked up to the front door, walked up toward the front door. Somebody contacted them out in front. There's about 150 people who are attending out in the front yard. And somebody came up and interrupted the officer who was talking to somebody from the house. The officer ended up having to try to arrest that guy. He pulled away, and the crowd immediately enveloped them. Somebody got behind the officer and started strangling him, and arm bar type of thing. They had quite a little melee that lasted a few seconds. Nobody ended up in the hospital or anything. The people who were at the party closed the doors and windows, and we got a search warrant, telephonic search warrant, and went in and made a bunch of arrests.
Chief, can
Yes.
you speak to the 2 marijuana incidents and what happened with those?
Yeah, there was, people were caught selling marijuana downtown. I can't really give you a whole lot of detail on those right now, but I'd be happy to next time.
Okay.
I'll have to, if you could help me remember, Carter, to give the details on those. And then, I don't remember what that assault one was. Oh, this was somebody was shot, and the suspect was arrested. We responded, was arrested.
I was going to ask you also about the man you said might be a mental health situation with the firearm incident. So it was a pellet gun?
Turned out to be, yeah.
And so what was he arrested? What were the charges?
I don't have the finer details, but my guess is that he was menacing people with the firearm, and the officers were comfortable with a crime of disorderly conduct if he was being threatening with it. I think he might have also been charged with menacing, but anyway, that's what the story is there.
And what's the pellet gun? What's the prohibition? I mean, how is that handled?
Well, there isn't a prohibition on a pellet gun. Where is that one?
Isn't that the man who was arrested? Because that was in the paper today?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was. If that's the same one.
Or maybe it's not the same one. I don't want to get you off track.
But in the case that you saw in the paper today, which I think is intended to be this one that's here, is if he goes out in public and aims in a public place, whether it's from his own private property, but it's in a place that's visible to the public, and he's terrifying people with what appears to be a firearm, then he can be charged with a crime of menacing if he puts them in fear of their safety, or disorderly conduct if he's threatening violent, tumultuous activity. So it was pretty disruptive, and that's what he would have been charged with. Any other questions? Okay, the mapping, you've seen these maps before. This shows where the activity, where the crimes have occurred, and then this shows where the officer activity is. And this is mostly for the manager's benefit. They want to know that the officers they're having work there are getting this work done. And they have a discussion about whether they're satisfied with the level of productivity there. And then the crimes, they concentrate in the same places. This is a 4-week look back at where the crimes have occurred. green squares are the car break-ins, the blue are burglaries, the red are blue, or I think it's the red are commercial burglaries, and then the car thefts, auto thefts. And they're in the West University neighborhood. We're seeing some growth in South Eugene, but the most persistent in the last several months has been this Bethel area between the tracks and out towards Green Hill, not all the way out to Green Hill, but North Terry. So that's where our hot spot, that's where we've had our officers focus their time. It's also been where we've seen most of the auto theft recently. A new icon that we started using is these houses of interest, and through intelligence gathering, we learned that there are offenders that are staying in houses, and there's drug activity or stolen property activity there. And the reason it's important to map those is that we see often that there are clusters of crimes around the houses where people are where people we know are out there offending are living. I'm going to zip through these. We've had an abnormal amount of stolen cars this year. I don't know how much higher it is from this year from last. One of our slides might show it. And we're seeing most of those stolen cars again in the B5 area, which is Bethel, Danaville. So we think somebody's living out there. Could be one or two people who are responsible for most of those.
And are they stealing them and shopping them, or are they stealing them and leaving them somewhere?
Stealing it, well, we're recovering them, and they're in the same condition typically. Steal them, recover them. Got a little map that shows where they're taken and where they're found. Here's a narrative of it, but one is, let's see, stolen on Chad and recovered on Chad, stolen on Applewood, recovered on Centennial. I'm not going to make you read through all that, but this is the crime analysis unit recommendations. That what they're seeing is there's enough of a pattern there that they think our efforts can disrupt it, that they think this is where we should work. So they don't always recommend the place where there's the highest crime. They just recommend the place where they think it's the kind of activity that our work can make a difference with during those hours. And then West University, our efforts in the West University over spring break have been pretty successful. If we could go back to 2008, you'd see that these numbers are huge over spring break. And for the last 3 years, we've kept them pretty constant and low. So those are successful numbers. Pretty. Kins Row is the same thing when the students are gone. Crime goes up there. Last 3 years has looked pretty good. Okay, this is a map that the Crime Analysis Unit has started producing that shows the relationship between where the car is stolen and where it's found. And sometimes it's just remarkable that you can see that somebody lives in one place where they steal the car, or that's where their friends live, and they have relations or associates that are in the other place, and there's this constant movement from one to the other, which leads us to believe that the same people are doing it. Okay, and then this is what I wanted to get to. These are the grants, and these are going to be posted. I mean, we'll be distributing this to the commission members, right?
Yeah, so I sent it out in last week's weekly email without the explanation, so this now includes some additional description.
I'm just going to give you a quick briefing on this. You can study it, and we'd be happy to have somebody come in and help answer questions. Deanne Enyard is our grant person, and she could explain in amazing detail what all these do. We have this regional technology grant that has helped us purchase and install public safety training simulation equipment, which is the equipment that's installed at the Station 1, Fire Station 1 at the 13th of Willamette. It's an amazing room, about the size of that half of the Kilcullen room. It has command trucks for fire and huge television screens, even bigger than the police screens, that help them go through simulated emergency exercises, and it improves the... It's a pretty good project. The fire department took the lead on it, and it's been very impressive. These burn grants have purchased a few things. This audio-visual network equipment are these screens that we use in briefing and in crime presentations. We use some of this money for the Public Safety Coordinating Council to pay for staff and other needs. We're replacing all of our shotguns with patrol rifles, which are safer, more accurate than the shotguns that we have. Many departments have long ago gone to a patrol rifle and away from the shotgun. I don't remember what the Connex box is. If you know any of these, jump in. Let's see. We buy ballistic vests with the assistance of a bulletproof vest grant. That's the same. We are funded by Department of Transportation to do seatbelt enforcement, and the state has been able to show that those efforts have brought down injuries and fatalities. We also are funded by Department of Transportation for drunk driving enforcement, and we do quite a bit of that. Let's see. And then, yes.
What do you do when you replace those shotguns with the rifles? What happens to the shotguns?
We haven't had to make that decision yet, but we might sell them back to manufacturer or distributor, or we might have them destroyed. Sort of a philosophical decision that police agencies make. And previous chiefs, I haven't had to deal with this one yet, so I'll have to work through it, but previous chiefs have gone to great lengths to not let them get back into the market somehow. So I'll have to figure that out.
Chief, you had mentioned about the ballistic vest. Just a question. When you have your ride-alongs and stuff, the vests that have been previously used or something like that, I don't know, has there been some kind of consideration for the observer to wear a vest, or?
Not until right now. I've had my mother right now.
Okay.
Would you make a note of that?
Yeah. I could have printed
on that. No, but we might consider that as an option. I had not thought of that one. Okay, our forensic evidence unit has been pretty good at seeking funding for training. It takes a lot of training to do to perform that function. Oops, sorry, this is really sensitive. Okay. Okay. We partnered with Big Brothers and Big Sisters and the Department of Youth Services for a grant for mentoring in order to reduce the involvement in gangs. We get grants from Homeland Security for bomb remediation. It's basically our explosive disposal unit. I know what this bought, but Homeland Security asked that I not tell you what it is, but it's a piece of equipment that helps us make the environment around a suspected bomb safer while we're trying to deal with it. This recruit volunteers for citizen first response. This came out of the Homeland Security, where the United States realized that in order to have a quick response, we can't rely entirely on government workers to provide that. We have to have community members. So there's a program to train citizen response teams to help with floods, with injuries, and following an earthquake or flood or man-made disaster. Okay. The funds, this is funding for, I don't know what year this is, if you see it yell out, but for exercise.
2010.
Okay. For exercises, we've done these before the Olympic trials, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was part of our preparation for the Olympic trials. Some of it pays for the required exercises for the fire department, joint exercises with the fire department out at the airport. And they're expensive because we have to hire a contractor to develop the scenario, have this huge tabletop exercise that involves all local agencies, not just police and fire, but EWEB and schools and so on, and introduces a disaster to the tabletop exercise, and then the people present are supposed to build out the incident command system and start assigning response and material to the problem, and that's how we learn how capable we are. And it's been pretty, it's excellent training for us. We get briefings and all kinds of things. Regional radio equipment, we're constantly trying to get grants to help invest in maintenance of the regional radio system, which is enormously expensive. For the Citizen Corps program, or regional radio, the Edward Byrne grant, we've used it to buy software and equipment for our case management, which is hard to do. We've used it to buy replacement tasers that have camera connections, rifles, and ballistic helmets. And that's all of that. Do you have questions about the grants, or would you like to study it? Well, you can decide if you want to have a presentation by the one by Deanne or others. And then the Women in Blue program will be starting April 2nd. We had quite a few applicants. Only 22 get to go through it. And the idea of that, if you hadn't heard, is to give women who might be interested in a career in law enforcement an opportunity to see what it's like. It can be intimidating to go through the testing process, partly because there's a physical fitness component, and it is a rigorous test. It is difficult, but where women fail usually comes down to technique, not strength. We have very small women that you've probably seen in uniform who are able to pass that test. And so this will be an opportunity to teach them how to succeed in that test and maybe not be as intimidated by some of the other components. The idea is that we want to hire the very best people. We don't want to accidentally exclude populations who assume that they wouldn't perform well. So that's the whole theory behind that, and hopefully it's successful and some of them turn out to be police officers here. The records management system in CAD, this is what will replace the AIRS system, and it'll move us light years down the road from AIRS, which has served us very well. We've got SunGuard is the company that we've hired for our records management system to allow us to do online reporting and many other things. And right now we're working with SunGuard to have the systems installed. They're preparing the training. We have to provide 3 or 4 days of training to everybody who's going to use it, even me, and newest police officer, records specialist, call takers, and so on. So this is a huge, huge undertaking. It'll be 2 years before we're totally immersed in it.
How do you budget for the training time on that? Is that a grant?
Well, that's what we're still trying to figure that out.
I have some question.
It's going to be expensive. Yeah. You have a question? Or that was your question?
I'm going to reserve that question for later, too. See that group and...
Okay.
Going back to the grants, are there time limits on any of these for you to use them?
Yes, there's almost always a time limit associated with it. In rare cases, we can get an extension.
So I noticed on some of the lists here, some of them are as old as 2008. Trying to find, I saw one was 2008, maybe 2009. It's the oldest one here that's still active. Is that normal for something to last? Like that's essentially
Well, and I don't know what the
years.
explanation is for that particular one, but we'll renew grants, or if we're not able to spend it in a given year for one reason or another, they'll ask to extend it for a year or two, and they'll permit that. So the original grant might go back to 2009, but new money is new funding comes in every year. Anything else?
So, Chief, now there's been several months since you've implemented the 2 captains dividing the city and data-led policing, and you applying the resources where the crime seems to emerge and all that. And that, I want to ask how that is going. And also, I don't necessarily see you report on, if you focus on an area where there's cars being stolen or whatever, that I don't see the CSOs coming behind and work that area, or the senior volunteer unit to go to that area. For example, you mentioned Beat 5, I believe. That is a place where there's a lot of problems. Is that happening, and are you not reporting? Because I would definitely like to see again, the crime prevention unit to work those areas right behind the officers.
Yeah, they do. Part of the saturation patrols includes the seniors on patrol and the crime prevention personnel. The crime prevention team makes an evaluation, and if they think it would be beneficial to go door to door, if the housing is concentrated enough, then they'll use that technique. Or they will, drive grid patterns, and they have their cars that look like police cars, and the seniors on patrol do the same thing. And then we'll park decoy patrol cars out and about, so it looks like police are present. We just do everything we can to make it look as though we're present.
I believe I made that suggestion some time ago.
That's probably why we call it the James Manning.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I didn't realize that till now.
Okay,
One of the things that I pointed out last month, and I see being more and more effective, is proactive policing by the officers on the beat. And again, I'd like to commend those officers who take the initiative to find out why somebody's in a neighborhood that doesn't look exactly right and what they're doing in that neighborhood, because so much of what that does is prevent further action by these people once they've been identified by the police as being out of place in a particular area, and have no reason to be prowling through the neighborhood at daytime when people are at work and, looking like they're in trouble. So I'd really like to commend them for taking the time to stop and ask people if they need help or what they're lost or whatever, and getting the result that they get from that, because it's evident in the fact that crime goes down when these proactive policing things are done in the area. So,
Yeah, and that's true, and I appreciate that. Our self-initiated activity is just going up and up and up. It's higher this year so far than it was during the same period last year, which is higher than the year before. The officers are recognizing that it makes a difference. It's always nice to put your energy into something that you think will matter, And the new thing that we've sort of dialed in the last 6 months is focusing on those neighborhood nuisance houses. And I think we're seeing some effect there, too. We're working on our 2012 annual report, and I think what we're going to find is that total crime has gone up about 2.6% in Eugene. Where it's gone down is in crimes of disorder. So that one, I don't know that that's necessarily good to know that, because so many of those arrests are initiated by officers. That's when the crime is reported, is when the officer sees it and makes an arrest. It could mean that they've gone down, but that number really doesn't necessarily say that. Property crime is up, I think, a little more than 4% in the last year. Anyway, these are pretty good numbers when you consider how many jail deaths we've lost and how many prolific offenders there are out there. So I'm pleased. The sad news is that each one of those represents a victim, and we're trying to reduce victimization. But with what we had, I think we're pretty effective.
Kate and I, on the other hand, with all the respect to my colleague here, I hope that officers, in fact, while they're trying to make a difference in doing initiation on their own, they're also understanding that there may be people out there that may look different and may, in fact, be part of that community. And I hope that they're not just going based on whether they think that person belongs or the car belongs to that neighborhood or the community. Instead, I would like to see some kind in the future, perhaps, to really revisit the community policing, in which I used to see some officers back when I lived in the Whitaker neighborhood. They actually got out of their vehicles and walked around and engaged people. That, to me, would be another way of kind of getting at the same place. So, something for you to consider as you go and try to get more resources.
Yeah, and the two things you mentioned, those are both of great concern to any community, any police department. And the question is, usually comes down to the will of a police department to train its police to focus on offenders for offensive, for criminal behavior and not on people for assumptions someone might make. And we do training in that. And, it's probably not as much as I wish we could provide, but it's more than most police agencies give their officers. And then The community policing is, the most expensive resource we have is the patrol officer, or the police officer, I should say, because detectives actually can cost a little more. And we have not only fewer police per capita, but fewer police per square, per acre here than most places. And so there isn't a lot of time to do that and be effective at reducing crime. So I don't want to do one or the other. We're trying to do both. And our crime prevention specialists are sort of doing the community policing stuff in the neighborhoods. The police officers are doing what uniquely they are authorized to do.
And of course, I want to comment on, I know the limitations on resources. And I spoke to somebody in New Mexico who have almost 3 times as many police officers in similar size, in area of Eugene, and they're saying, how do you go about doing your stuff? And I want to ask the chief. But so I understand that limitation, but again, those things, as you start to grow and hopefully get more resources, these kind of things have to be considered for the betterment of the community.
Yeah, you're right. I agree.
I had a question. You mentioned giving input on a hearing regarding fortified alcohol. And I know some years ago we've gotten some of the markets to stop selling that, and I was just wondering what the status was currently.
We ran, Sergeant Fitzpatrick conducted a little experiment in, I might have the years wrong, but it was around 2009 and 2010. The first year, there was 100 and some calls for service in the 7x3 block area in Whitaker that included Washington Jefferson Park.
That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, and it was 150, I want to say. And I can send you the report. In fact, if you remind me, you can just email Sergeant Fitzpatrick's report. And then he used that same 3-month period the following year and got voluntary compliance from all the markets within that 7x3 block area, and it was a 70-some% reduction in crime. And it went from something like more than 50 incidents of open container and drinking in public to 5. It was just a remarkable difference. So it would reduce, if we could compel certain neighborhood markets to not sell that stuff, we could reduce those quality of life crimes here.
So the voluntary program kind of sunsetted and...
Yeah, it sunsetted, and Sergeant Fitzpatrick tried to persuade a number of other markets. They voluntarily did outside this 90 days. And today, I don't know if any markets have retained the policy of not selling fortified beverages.
Well, I just happened to have a meeting with the head of Dairy Mart, and we were talking about the market near Washington Jefferson.
Yeah.
Dairy Mart won't sell the fortified alcohol, but she's got that corner market nearby that is.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
Inexpensive.
Yeah.
High octane.
Thank you.
Yep. I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you. So now we have committee reports from Joe.
I can start. Okay, so we met. We have, I guess, 3 items on the agenda. One is the anonymous survey, which you guys have on the back of your form, or back of your handout this week. The situation is we've been trying to make contact with the police union and have not been able to, or have not been successful with that. And so I guess the question is the best ways to distribute the survey to the officers in light of the fact that the union hasn't jumped on board with this. There was a minor change. We removed one of the questions and reworded another one, but that leaves us with the 6 questions and a minor typo. We need a 7 to 6 down on that page. But that's that first part. Any questions on that one thus far? Yeah.
I move that we provide this survey this anonymous survey in areas of the police department that are approved by the chief for the officers to take and set a limit of 2 weeks.
Second.
for the survey to be taken.
Oh, yeah, I know. Chair?
I'm looking something up, I'm not just staring at my phone.
No, it's okay, I'm just getting your attention. So Juan Carlos seconded, and I just wanted to, I think that's a great idea, just in terms of formatting, you know, if it's, I'm assuming it'd be with spaces for folks to fill in the answers and.
We had originally talked about if it was electronic, there's fear of it not being anonymous, so the safest way is to actually provide a PDF or something that they can, or something that they can print out and hand in a hard copy, which then makes it, so we'll probably distribute something that they can type in and then print out and not provide back a electronic copy.
And how would that fit with Tamara's motion?
My motion was for paper. If somebody has a friendly amendment, because I think that's the most anonymous way to do it.
The PDF way? The paper way?
Does anyone want to change that?
Yeah, I'd like to go a little bit of discussion. What sort of, I guess we have,
Point of order, there's a queue.
sir, okay.
Okay, the queue is James, then Cameron.
Well, I'll be brief. I think it's good that we're continuing on with this. We worked on this for some time and stuff. I'm a little bit disappointed with the rep, the union rep, because we made countless attempts to contact them, and they, for whatever reason, refused to even give us the courtesy of saying that, hey, we don't even want to look at it or respond at all. So I think that's a mark against them as a union, because we are trying to do something that the design of this is to try to provide a linkage between the officers and the department to the community. So I just want to get that out there. I think that proceed on it in the manner that we're going with the chief's approval and stuff. I think that's the proper way to go from there. But it doesn't sit very well for the union rep.
Next is Joe, and then Juan Carlos. Oh, I'm sorry, Cameron.
So having been the person that made the contacts with the police union president, it's not that they were refusing. We did send them the survey, him the survey. He didn't have any comment on it. We had several meetings scheduled, but there were personal issues that took up his time with family illnesses. And so several of those meetings were canceled, and I believe now we hit the time when they're in negotiations, contract negotiations, and so speaking as someone who's participated in union negotiations, it takes up all of your time. So I don't think that they're so much not interested in commenting and meeting with us. We had one meeting that was just canceled at the last minute. Caitlin and I were scheduled to meet, and you know, something came up, and he apologized. So I'm not trying to defend that. I'm just explaining that there was contact, and there was not a negative. I never got any negative comment about it. We had provided the survey to him electronically. So the second question I have on it is, I'd like to get the chief's input, since I had talked about that ahead of time, as to whether the best way is to do it paper or electronic. And I was just thinking that it would go in like common areas like break room, not in the department itself, in areas where the officers might frequent, but they're not necessarily at work when they're taking it, when they might be on their break, and then have like a box that they deposit it in. That seems like the most anonymous way to take it to me. And then if we gave it for 2 weeks, that seems like plenty of time. So that's why I made that motion. But I'm interested if the chief has a comment on it in case there's a friendly amendment.
Yeah, if you don't mind giving us a little flexibility, we could find places around the building where we could place the forms and put a box in a central place where they could be deposited, where it would be fairly anonymous.
Okay, now we have Joe.
Yeah, I think Tamara covered most of what I was going to say. The question was, could they be emailed? And the other question is, what about a department-wide distribution of, you know, mail or whatever, mailbox stuffers, if you guys have mailboxes, I don't know. That's the only question, that's my question. If that's possible, that would be good.
I don't think it would be more work to do that. There's 310 people to distribute it to. we might get a better response if we did it that way. I don't know if you have an opinion on your feeling.
The last time we started to do this, we had crafted a cover memo that you were going to front and send to everybody. And then it would be a PDF they could print out, fill out, and then provide. So you can distribute it electronically, but you can also allow them to not respond electronically.
And that could be done in like 1/100th of the time. I'm going to send it that way. I don't know what would get a better response.
I'm more interested in creating their own.
No, not yet. Was that all done? Well, Carlos?
I'm also glad that this finally came to fruition. Certainly that committee's been working, or we started working on this for a while now. The committee's finally almost done with it. Let's not keep our eyes away or put our eyes somewhere, but let's focus on the intent. The way I understand it, we're trying to capture feedback to the police commission about specific questions. So I'm interested in still in the feedback. I'm also very interested in keeping it anonymous, otherwise we're not going to have participation. I thought about whether or not the feedback should be or can be electronically. That defuses the purpose of being anonymous. I believe that we can still distribute via email or PDF, but in fact the actual participation can be paper in a way that is not going to be traced back. I know that some officers will be more likely to participate. I'm also encouraged by seeing an op-ed piece by the police union president about words that he used, collaboration and working with the community, the members of the community, and all these things that I've been waiting years to hear. But I also want to see that increase more. I want to hear that our chair and the vice chair actually met with the president of the union, because in so many ways that slows things down. Thanks for mentioning that if you got feedback, that can easily say, well, we never actually did unless you have it in writing, or yes, go ahead and go, whatever. So I'm cautiously optimistic about getting them engaged. I think it's important. A lot of things don't move forward without the union. That's unfortunate in some case. As a union member, I understand that piece. Thanks.
Can I clarify something, just in
Yeah,
case
go ahead.
people are wondering? We didn't need their permission to move forward, we were just seeking some mutual agreement, so I didn't know if that was clear to folks.
No, that's a good clarification. So I wonder if you accept the friendly amendment to provide for the survey to be sent out electronically with the cover letter from the chief, if he is agreeable, as well as left in public spaces.
I was going to offer a suggestion on it's appropriate.
What is appropriate now?
Well, I hope I'm not creating a problem for you, Carter, by saying the following.
What's Carter? That's okay.
Well, I don't know much about SurveyMonkey, but the SurveyMonkey software that's free. But if we could easily build one that did this, then with a cover letter from me, we could send them a PDF that they could print out, submit one way. They could also do the SurveyMonkey if they chose to do that. If they're comfortable with it, some people prefer that. And then we could also leave them in common areas.
So what's your friendly amendment then?
To provide the survey through an electronic format as well as a hard copy in common areas.
I think that covers the SurveyMonkey too. Sure, that's fine with me.
Don't you accept that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob?
Well, I just wanted to clarify, but I think you just did, and that was that the part about the chiefs on the cover letter with it, and I thought, that's not part of the motion now.
I did say it.
Okay, well, this last one discovered the two issues of the electronic or
And
endorsed, and, okay. So my objection would be to the chief providing a cover letter, because the survey is being requested by the outreach committee, not the chief's office, and I wouldn't want any officer to feel like the chief is exerting any pressure on them to either fill out this and return this, or or that he endorses it or otherwise. It's just a matter of us really providing this to them for their feedback. And insofar as the chief is the main person who runs the department, I guess he has to have permission to do that, and maybe an email saying it has my permission, or whatever, to be distributed. Yeah, I would like to amend it so that the chief's cover letter or whatever information he sends only deals with the issue of permission to return the survey, but not with any kind of endorsement or any request that they return it. Just, and I don't know quite how he would want to word that, but in other words, I think it should be coming from the chair, and the vice chair should get together, provide a cover letter saying we're requesting this from you, and that's my amendment, is that the chair.
Third-party research
chair-
field.
Yeah.
I'll accept that. Juan Carlos, you're the second.
That's a good point. Yes.
James?
Okay, I was just going to say that I agree with Bob, but I would go even further, that it's not specifically from the chair or the vice chair, but it's from the police commission.
Right. My point was for them to draft a cover.
Right, okay.
But, no, yeah, from.
Yeah, from the whole police commission, yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
That's understood. We don't need to make another amendment.
Okay.
Okay. Seeing no more discussion, all of those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstaining?
Okay, so I guess it's time for me to get on to point two.
Yes.
Okay, the forum at the university looks like the arming of the campus police has kind of bumped us off of that activity. And so we talked about a number of alternatives to it. And the one that sort of surfaced was the possibility of doing a YouTube video for the students. The object of the thing is to reach the students with a message that would be aimed at reducing crime. So, for example, theft of cars. We might talk about the fact that the club is available at cost through the police department, or when you go away, don't leave things in your car, that kind of stuff. There's probably a don't be stupid component and have loud parties and cause problems. There's probably, 3 or 4 other components to it. But essentially a message that instead of being delivered at the end of the spring term when everybody's going to be leaving, would be delivered at the beginning of the fall term when everybody's getting there. And if we did it as a YouTube video, could be sent around as an email that they just simply click on the link, and would get this, rather than something that had to be printed, which involved a cost for which we probably would have to raise money, or some other forum that we would have to invite people into the room. So that sort of seemed like a higher yield hit. And the thought was if that we could actually kind of make it amusing. Possibly one of the things that's very popular these days are these continuous sort of hip-hop rap things where you go from scene to scene and the rap continues. And if we got some of the officers to get involved with that, I've actually talked with some filmmakers in the area, and they think it's a really cute idea. So we may have an opportunity to work with some of the officers, put together a script, make something interesting for YouTube, and put it out as our outreach to students, to do crime prevention. So that's the current thought, and I'll leave it there and open it for discussion.
I'm not in favor of a rap type video. I think but I am in favor of a YouTube video. I think that probably is the best way to reach the larger number of students. I like a little more decorum in the video, although, it needs to reach it needs to speak to the population we're aiming at. So, I'm confident we can work that out. The details weren't really discussed at great length at the committee meeting. So, the idea of a YouTube video and maybe putting a link to that on crime prevention team, if they're already sending something to the students in the fall, which they have sent things out before, was my understanding, via email, maybe tacking it onto that.
So, I myself, Claire and James, I went ahead and gave some people a call at U of O, seeing how this would go, and they said they would not send a YouTube video that we made unless they were discussing it out first to all their students.
Unless they were doing what?
Unless they approved it ahead of time. So we would have to start meetings with them to do that. Claire?
Yes, I think it's a good idea in terms of the vehicle for getting the message out, and if we can involve the university on the front end so that they approve of the content. And then I think in terms of making sure we're speaking to the audience, I think it'd be great to try to find a way to bring together some university students to get their input on what would speak to them. I mean, I don't necessarily object to the rap idea, but if it's not done right, then there's going to be a spoof of it made pretty soon and going around instead. So, that's okay too. But, so I think that's a good creative idea. I think just getting more input and some of the audience that we're trying to reach involved so that we do something quality that's going to affect them and stick in their heads in terms of the crime prevention.
Yeah.
James?
Well, a couple of things. First, the message that we want to get, are we attempting to bridge a relationship with the student body, or are we trying to develop techniques so that they can protect themselves better? One suggestion I would have, and I don't know if they already do this, but when they have their initial orientation, we can provide crime prevention specialists that can speak to all of these concerns. That's right there as a presentation as far as of their orientation. There's nothing wrong with a video or anything like that, but then how many students are going to click on the video? So is that going to be the best? It's a good option, don't get me wrong, I think so, but the intent, depending on what our actual intent is, I think that by having part of their orientation would be more effective because you'll have their attention and you can bring these highlights out and then you can repeat them as needed. But what are we doing as the police? Are we building a bridge to the student body, or?
So I'm just going to call attention to the fact that we're beyond time right now. So I need someone to move to extend time so we can get through this and the other committee report.
I move that we extend the time to end with the next committee report.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Awesome. Okay, you can continue.
Okay, I'm through. Thank you.
I wasn't trying to cut down the conversation. I just thought someone was going to bring it up soon.
No, that's fine.
Can I answer that question about James's question? I think the reason the outreach committee took that is one of the things that was identified, one of the groups that was identified for outreach effort was the U of O student population. So that's the goal of providing any kind of communication.
So building a bridge with that. Yeah. Okay.
So Joe, I'll give you a contact so you can set up a meeting with someone to go about and start talking?
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Cool.
Okay, so just, I guess I've got some positive feedback here. Any major objections at this point? Okay, we're good to go. Okay, item number 3, State of Public Safety Forum. I was sort of asked to make one more round to find a date. We had a May, I believe, 15th date, which the group said was too early. So during June, we had only 2 days that it turns out that the library had space and the church had open parking for the use of the parking, where we're going to coordinate with the Catholic church that's on the corner right next to the library so that there's close parking. So those 2 dates were June 17th and June 24th. They're both Mondays. I put a tentative hold on June 17th, but Carter is going to have to make the formal request for the library. And so is the 17th a good day? Okay?
They meet every Monday.
Oh, it's on a Monday?
Yes.
Same in daytime, or
Both
you?
of them are
Tuesday,
Monday.
Wednesday, or Thursday?
I want to do it on the council day.
It's not a second or fourth. So, second and fourth for the councils.
No, every.
It's the week
Well,
between.
sometimes we don't have meetings the first week of the month, but
Oh.
otherwise it's every Monday.
Oh, it is, yeah, okay, well, that's it, that's the only time the church has a lot of stuff at the beginning of June for graduations and stuff. The library has a lot of budget committee stuff tying up many days of the week, and these are the only 2 dates that we get both. We can have one or the other in terms of the parking lot or the Taylor, what is it, Taylor Baskin Room, or however you pronounce that, but those are the only 2 dates that both make it.
Is there a reason that the library is exclusively being considered?
Because of their locations.
The new LCC building wouldn't have a space that might accommodate it?
Atrium building too.
We talked about the atrium, but that leaves the same parking problem.
Yeah.
The committee discussed it at length and voted on the library. Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
If we just hold it at the library, there's other public meetings there. We were trying to be more accommodating in parking, but I don't think the overriding decision-making point here should be the parking at the church. I mean, we were trying to be more accommodating to accommodate more folks, but certainly there's other meetings there and folks have to fend for themselves on parking. So maybe we should uncouple those.
Well, and in the evening, parking becomes free, at a certain time, so it's still not a ton of parking, but it doesn't.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
There is one more constraint. The library closes at 8 o'clock, so if we hold it from 5:30 to 7:30, we would have enough time to clean up and move folks out. Is there any objection to moving it a little earlier? Otherwise, we got to pay them $90 to stay late. Okay? So I could go back to if we decouple it, I can go back and get more dates. Do we have a preference on a day? And then I can do that. So, no Mondays.
I want to get the council involved and being there as much as I can.
So, any particular choice of a day? Because I can go, and do you want me just to reserve one, or do we want to go another month?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I know that Tamara had suggested that Mark or I be there, and so if it doesn't conflict with CRB, which is second Tuesday, that would be great.
Okay, so you don't want Tuesdays?
Second Tuesday.
Just no second Tuesday.
You go to town.
Okay.
Just if you want to go there, I'm sorry.
Second Thursday is probably
I
not
have
good.
communicated with Mark, but he didn't identify that.
Please
Yeah.
do it.
I won't,
I asked him about no dates, the meeting, he didn't
Okay.
tell me that.
And I'll check with okay, so we have no Mondays. Okay, no second Tuesdays, any other days we want to
No
eliminate?
second Thursday would probably.
Well, that one I got.
No
Okay.
first Tuesday, that's our committee.
Yep, got that one. Okay,
Okay, you can do it, go for a Wednesday.
I'll try. Okay, so I will make, and at this point, I'm authorized to make a decision and book it. Okay, we're going to go with that. Okay, so that's that. Let's see, community, oh yes, we have one more item, and that's the fact that there are 2 open seats on the committee. At the moment, we only have 4 members, and we can have 2 more, so we ought to be talking about that. So, if somebody else wants to come join us, please.
I wish I could.
Okay.
I'm committed out.
Okay. I guess that's enough for tonight.
Okay, so I have 3 items. The first one is, we have some nominees for vacancies on the committee. Bernadette Conover, as you know, left, and that created a vacancy. And I'm about to ask in the form of a motion, Madam Chairman, that we remove Linda Hamilton from the committee officially. She has been absent since last year. She came to one meeting when she was appointed to the committee and has not been back since. We have had several email and phone exchanges, and in way of explanation, she is very, very busy with personal matters at this time in her life, and I feel like she just won't be able to make it. Ordinarily, that wouldn't be a problem, except with a small committee like this, it does create issues for quorum if everybody's not present. So we need to refill that position. So my motion is to remove Linda Hamilton from the Policy Screening Review Committee.
Second.
Also, to clarify, because I know this will probably be asked, I sent Linda an email letting her know that this motion was going to be made at this meeting and asking her to call me if she had any problems with that, and she did not respond.
I hope I'm incorrect, but I thought she actually had resigned from that committee and mentioned that she was not going to be the liaison to the human rights. So if that's not the case, I thought she said something to that
She may have
effect.
mentioned she might be discontinuing soon,
Okay.
but she hasn't done anything officially.
Well, I want to make sure, because if she in fact had resigned, then this motion is not even necessary. So I want to make sure that that's researched before this motion is actually taken into effect.
I've not received any official notification.
Okay, so carry.
Okay, does anyone want to discuss this? Okay, great.
Me.
All of those in favor of removing Linda from the PSRC, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstaining? Okay, that's okay.
Second part of the motion, the second part of the action is that now we have 2 vacancies and we have 3 nominees for that position. We have nominated at our last committee meeting, Joe Tyndall, Jim Garner, and Caitlin Lang. So I would move that we fill those 2 positions out of the 3 nominees by secret ballot.
No secret
By
ballot.
by ballot, I'm sorry, not secret ballot, by written
Second.
ballot.
I'll second.
Claire?
I just have a clarifying question. So, Joe, you're serving on the Community Outreach Committee? Are you the chair of the Community Outreach Committee? And Jim, are you serving on any other, you're serving on that committee as well? And Caitlin, you're...
We're all on the committee.
Everyone's on a committee because there's not enough people.
To clarify, these 2 committees are also only technically in existence until the end of May.
Okay. Thank you.
And one other item is that Tamara is also on the other one, so she serves on both.
Well, we have a work plan. So that's the end of our work plan here.
Okay, so can everyone take out a piece of paper?
Thanks so much. Just getting some.
I'm sorry. Don't rip them in half. She told me.
So we're cooked without ballots.
They're getting a raise.
Yeah.
Do something to
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Voting
Yeah, before we do a ballot on there, I would just like to ask a question. I know Madam Chair Lady is involved with a lot of things and she's doing stuff, you know. Is this one that you would really want to extend to? I mean, among all the many other things that you're doing too, you're really stretching yourself all the way out.
I really do not want to be on Outreach Committee at all. I've made that very clear to multiple people, but I'm asked to stay on it so that we can have a committee still.
Okay, well, I was talking about the PS.
No, I know, but we wouldn't be talking about me being on another committee if I had my choice.
You have a choice.
Just to clarify. And I'm fine if I'm not on it. I want to be on it. I do, but it's your choice. Tamara.
So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, Chief, is that the chief is going to be appointing somebody as the new policy, that's the proper term, policy analyst, is that our policy person to work on Lexipol policies, and that the goal of appointing that person to that position is to complete the Lexipol, the migration of the POM to the Lexipol format. So, given that that's the case, the person that I would like to, or the people that I'd like to see on the committee, speaking as a member of the committee, is someone who's ready to work, becomes prepared to the meetings, and ready to, work on policies and move those policies forward. Because while we're not bound by any means by what the department or the chief is doing in regard to policies, I've said before, and I will say again, that I feel like this body will be ineffective if we're on a different timeline with providing input on those policies. than the department is. Essentially, they'll be completed with policies if we're slow, and our input, while we might give it and the chief might consider it, I feel like will be less effective than if we are moving in the same timeline. It doesn't mean we have to look at every single policy that they're working on, but it does mean that we need to be aware of the timeline and willing to put in the time to give effective feedback.
So, Madam Chairman, I think we have to vote on the motion. Did I miss that, or did we?
You don't have to vote on nomination.
Okay, that's fine. Then, we're voting for 2 out of 3.
Like 2 names
For the
down,
2 choices.
hand them to me.
Sergeant will be assigned to
And put your name on the top, sorry.
I was wondering about this. No secret ballot.
Yeah, there is
ballot.
No secret ballots. It'll be reported in the next month's minutes.
the counting is secret, the ballots.
I'm gonna go.
Can I remain secret until I get somebody?
Yeah, right.
Where's my secret ballot over here?
Okay.
Last smoke.
You mean yellow smoke?
I need to go see this without you all.
So,
Yeah, I did.
You have more?
You can do it if you want.
Bob has more.
Oh, Bob, go ahead.
one last thing,
Yep.
and that's that we have had a loggerhead on the committee with 2-2 tie on the 4 people that were there on whether or not to report a particular policy out. So we have both the park use restriction policy and the police stops policies are both stuck in committee. We are unable to report them out at this point because people have more issues they would like to talk about. And we weren't able to get a motion passed on either side because we were visited. Okay. Now,
I move that we take from the table of the Policy Screening and Review Committee, the policy on park use restriction. This is the policy. It's essentially stuck in committee.
Point of order?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how hardcore we are with the Roberts rules, but my understanding that if a vote fails to pass because of the tie, then it fails.
Yes.
Yeah, so the motion was, in the committee was to table it.
And so the tabling failed.
no, actually, I can clarify this. Yeah, you have a good point. The motion was to remove a paragraph from the policy. That motion failed by 2-2 vote. A substitute motion was offered to include the paragraph in the policy. That motion failed
I
by
see.
2-2.
Okay.
So we are at an impasse.
Deadlock.
We are at loggerhead. Right.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
No.
Second for
But-
discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second it. Okay.
Do people want a chance to look at what you were just given, or Bob, do you want to go over this?
I think the paragraph in contention was in part, on the back, page 2, part B, procedures, section 2, determine the appropriate length of restriction. Discussion centered around whether or not the police should be the ones that are determining how long a person should be restricted from park use, or whether the Parks Department should be the arbiter of how long the person is suspended based on past practices and their policies, and how they want to see it implemented. So the argument was to remove the paragraph or leave it in and continue the way we are doing it.
Tamara, then Juan Carlos, then Joe.
So, the reason, just to explain to those of you who haven't been at one of the meetings, but several members that aren't on the committee were there so they understand what's going on, is this is the only place in any police department policy where the police policy dictates not enforcement, but the restriction for the offense. So there's no, that's usually established by ordinance or law, And this is the only place in any one of the police policies where the police department policy dictates the length of the restriction. So the motion that was made in the committee was number 2 would say instead, to determine the appropriate length of restriction authorized under the Parks and Open Space rules. In other words, the Parks and Open Space rules, the suggestion was that they have, just like all the other Parks and Open Space rules, dictate the restrictions, that the length of the restriction appear in those rules instead of in this police policy. So that was the only issue of contention at the committee, and the reason that I'm making the motion is because it's deadlocked in committee, and I would like to move it forward to the full body for consideration on our April agenda.
So your motion, sorry. So the motion is to remove paragraph 2?
Yes. Well, to substitute it with language that would say instead, determine the appropriate length of restriction authorized under Parks and Open Space rules.
And do we know that Parks and Open Space has articulated those rules, or they would need to have a procedure?
They would need to have a procedure, and there's been preliminary discussion.
I would support that.
Okay, next is Juan Carlos, then Joe, then James.
It occurs to me there was a lot of frustration at the table because we were expecting information back from city staff, and that actually never came. And frustration came around because we needed to have enough information to be able to make decisions and make the recommendations in which that committee is in fact created for. I have an issue with any member of any committee to, in fact, if the outcome of that is not to the satisfaction, that they will want to pull it out. That's a dangerous precedence that we should not get ourselves into. Although any member of this body can make any kind of motion, I want to make sure that everybody understands the other piece. If we're asking for information, it's not coming. We're asking it for a reason. Now with new members that are coming on board, I see these coming back and getting it completed. But again, the piece of information that is missing is that we were not given the tools that we need to be able to make those recommendations. I do not see, do I want to see that precedent to be able to pull any kind of policy in which one of us, anyone, is not satisfied and then try to do it this way. So I will definitely be able to no on this motion.
In the queue, we have Joe, James, Bob, Caitlin. Joe, you're up.
Yeah, I was at that meeting, and I remember, and I may be incorrect on this, but I believe that there was a motion to bring it out, and it failed. And so I'm kind of seeing this as an end run around that process, basically disenfranchising Jesse, who, Commissioner Lorkey, who had some pretty strong opinions about this particular procedure.
To clarify, there were 4 people, so 2 people had strong opinions one way and 2 had the other, just to be fair. James?
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that the motion was to table this until the next meeting, April, which would inhibit or prohibit further discussion on this thing.
I didn't make putting it on April's agenda part of the motion. The motion was just to take it off the table of the policy screening committee.
Okay.
Because I didn't think we had time today, but...
Okay, so with it being tabled and it was second and stuff, then, that doesn't leave room for discussion and stuff, not when you table.
Remove it from the committee agenda.
Remove it from the committee.
Yeah.
So she didn't motion to table this?
No, to bring it to the full...
Oh, okay, well, I thought I was seconding the table. I mean, discuss it some other time, but, okay.
Hey, Bob, you're up.
Take my second back.
In deference to what Commissioner Carlos Valle has said, normally that would be correct. We would not want to usurp the action of a committee and to take something off a table from the committee. It's pretty serious when they're working on it. But we reached an impasse. We are not going to get any closer to resolving this in the future because part of the problem is Parks is going to do what they're going to do. They're going to decide the length of time and restrictions and so forth on this particular policy. We cannot speed that up. We cannot ask them to hurry up and do that. We don't have the right to do that. We can't interfere with them and dictate to them when they do this. they're going to do it or not do it, and that's their choice. So we only can deal with the part that we have, and that is whether or not we agree that the police department should be the one deciding how long people are suspended and restricted for. And so to get it out of the impasse that we're in the committee, you know, it's probably a good idea for us to make that decision as a commission, vote on it and pass it on. Thank you.
Okay. Just speaking from a note taker, AKA I was a note taker last time. Never seen this policy before, never seen the conversation before. Watching the conversation, again, this is my opinion, but it was, I saw the frustration of Jesse and Carlos that they wanted information that they didn't get. However, I will say I did not think it was pertinent to making this decision. Park is going to do what Park's going to do. And we need to figure out if we want to determine the restriction. That was the question. In our policy, do we feel like this is our purview? Do we feel like this is affecting our community? We need to give feedback on our community values based on this. And do we feel like the police have this purview? And this is appropriate for our community? And no matter what Parks says, we can't even tell Parks, like, hey, go create this policy. That's not our place. It's not our place. And so if you see that differently, okay, I just want to put that perspective out there that I really feel like this is kind of one of those areas where we're stretching our reach a little too far, we're taking up time, and we're not getting through policy effectively. Tamara. Then James.
I agree with what Caitlin said. That's essentially the heart of the matter. Whether or what timeline the Parks Department moves on to include the duration of the restrictions in their policy, we have no control over. It could be a month from now, it could be a year from now, it could be 2 years from now. And we're going to let this policy sit in committee when actually their timeline is irrelevant to our policy recommendation, which is, in my opinion, that the police department's role is in enforcement, not in setting the duration of restriction for violation of the parks rules. They don't set the duration for any other ordinance, and so I feel like it's inappropriate to have in here. It seems like a simple issue to me for the police commission to say, our recommendation on this policy is that the termination in a police policy be removed and instead refer back to the parks rules. And I understand the frustration of the committee members who want the Parks Department to tell us when they're going to do that, but they haven't told us that, and we don't know when or if they're going to. So I see no point in holding this policy up, waiting for a word that may or may not ever come in the near future.
Would anyone like to discuss this further? Yeah.
While I agree with the amendment, or how it wants to be reworded so it follows what the park says, which is nothing right now, but at least it will if they ever make the decision. My concern is bringing to this meeting is no public notice that this was going to be brought up. So I don't know if we're calling for a vote here on this tonight or not, but I don't feel we can. Unless there's something that I don't understand about the rules here, but I thought things like that had to be announced publicly, so they're public had to. Okay. Well, my understanding is that it did, but I thought we had other risks.
Tamara, then Claire, then James.
If folks are uncomfortable with that from a public notice perspective, then we can certainly add it to our April agenda. That's fine with me if somebody has a friendly amendment to that, but my main point being it needs to be moved on, so it needs to move out of committee to the full commission.
Yeah, so I will offer that friendly amendment. Before I do, I'm just going to offer a little bit of a critique. I think this is the second time I've been to a meeting where we've had kind of a contentious issue brought up in the last, at 8:15, after a 2.5-hour meeting, and I really think we need to think of another way to handle this, because it stretches people's nerves and their brain power, and it's not productive. So that's a critique. I apologize for being negative. I think we should table this, so I offer a friendly amendment to table this and bring it up at our April meeting. I think that the issues brought up by the subcommittee are valid, but I also think that we can't keep sitting on things, and if we're at an impasse, it's appropriate to ask the full commission to weigh in and move things forward.
As the motion maker, I don't like the word table. I'd rather have it say
Postpone.
that we're placing it on the April agenda.
Okay,
for
so
the
I
full
I would like to make a
commission.
friendly amendment to move this discussion to our April meeting.
I'll accept that. James, you're the second.
Let's vote. I'll vote on that.
I have a question.
You
So
accept that?
if the committee meets,
For April.
if the committee meets between now and the full police commission, are they then not allowed to work on that even though we haven't actually taken action on this?
It just removes it from the committee to the commission.
Yep.
The motion removes it from the committee to the full commission to decide, because the committee's in an impasse.
But,
Well, it will not be because there will be two members.
If it passes.
but members could bring work to the full commission. There's,
It depends on what the chair says is the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, so I think my point is hopefully it's being understood. Between now and the next full police commission, we will have a policy screening review committee meeting. If that committee, in fact, works on these policies, if we, in fact, end up taking back this policy, what's the point of them putting this on the full commission? Again, that's fine. If we want to do that, that's fine. But I want to make sure that it's understood with the two new members coming on board.
James, I believe you're next.
Yeah, I think the motion was that that the committee not work on this, but this particular one, but it comes to the full commission at the next meeting. That when the policy screening hold their meeting, you will not, they're not going to work on this. This is going to come to the full commission at the April meeting.
That's what he
That's
has.
the motion.
Yeah.
So
If the motion passes.
in essence, they're actually doing it already without even having a vote.
Well, we have to still vote.
If you're
No.
keeping the committee from working on that. In fact, you already are taking that away from
Only if the
them.
motion passes, Juan Carlos.
Okay,
If it fails, then you can.
got it.
Okay. James.
Yeah, I think that there's probably some other information, what does council have as far as the ordinance that governs this whole thing, as far as access and things like that. I too agree that we should not have our officers doing court's business, trying to enforce something that, arbitrarily and not have a clear guideline. That's not what they do. What does council have to say about this? What is the ordinance that governs this? I think that's the area that needs to be focused on instead of what Parks does. Council trumps park any day. So,
Council do the authorization for parks and open space rules, right, Claire?
I don't know the history,
There's a
so.
whole parks, in case you guys haven't looked at it, parks and open space rules is like this thick. And dictates every other thing about the restriction except the length, the duration of the restriction, which appears in the police department's policy.
then I think that's something that should be deferred to council for clarification, since they're the ones that create the ordinance and stuff.
So that could be a discussion at the April meeting too.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking the same thing.
Okay, also at the April meeting, I'm going to put committee reports at the beginning, because that's why we have a problem towards the end. So we're just going to actually flip the whole order, and you're going to be surprised, and it's going to be fun, and the public's probably going to be mad because they'll have to talk at the end, but we'll not have stressful stuff later, right? Oh, sassy Caitlin's out, it's late. Okay, so we are going to vote now, seeing no further discussion, and you all have thought about a lot in your head. Okay? All those in favor of taking this out of committee and placing it on the April's agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, hands, stick them up in there.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. You got Caitlin and
Okay. All those opposed, say nay and stick your hand up. Okay.
That's only two.
Yeah, that's great. All those abstaining, didn't happen. Okay. So that passes. So that's happening. And Bob, do you have anything else you want to cover? Okay, well, we only extended the meeting for committee reports, so we're adjourned.
Don't we have an election that just happened?
Yeah, we need the result of the election.
Caitlin received 5 votes, Jim received 7 votes, Joe received 4 votes. So it is Caitlin and Jim.
thank you.
I don't think- What did you say about the results?
I said, oh, thank you.
Who's voted in?
Oh, it's Jim and Taylor.
That's exactly true. You know, this is just, I've been open here for 4 months, and we continue to, I know, we get 4 people work. And I know we voted again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
Thank you for your vote, James. No worries. Righty, we got a little too high there.
Take it down a 2.
Take it down a notch.
Nothing about that. Yeah, right. And you're not wrong. I mean, there is one place that doesn't have to have literature by all this, it's just that it is very struggle with economics.
Thank you, James.
No, good meeting.
Good night, James. Thanks, James. I hope you don't mind me teasing. No, I think